But did you know that Africa is the place where the body of the first man was found? My daddy says that makes it the place where all people originated from. I'm from Africa, you from Africa, you African booty scratcher.
Disappear like that triangle out Bermuda. They can't find his body, but they know that I'm the shooter. I say cut my sentence in half, and I spread a little rumor. Deal? Well, you can look in Oklahoma if you want to find them Sooners.
So long, got 2 accounts to hold my bank. I'm going on the rage, I'm pumped just like a gauge. I got so many hoes, I got my own white page. Mine on the mill and I'm all up on my channel. Hit a nigga on Buckner, and he let it on lead metal. My core is to me, but not the mixtape Messiah. So if you listen to my flows, yes sir, the fire. My freestyle is hot, just like a boiling pot. Keep that ring around your eye like that dog named Spike. Making niggas flip flop, go from hard to Ford. Let me give a shout out to that boy D-Boy. What's up, baby? It's that boy Star. Drop 5 screens. Candy, paint, think it's spearmint green. I feel 4 lean. What's up to a king? Give me my crown, I'm a freestyle king. Man, I'm in the booth. Goes on my tooth. Put a nigga on his back just like a PS2. Ride bubble beans. Start making ends. Hit a nigga in his chin. Watch it split like twins. On the damn mic, yes, so I go fed. Like a wave cap, I need a hoe that's on the head. Breaking on the mic, you can call me a wizard. Dairy Queen tried to hide me cause my chain was a blizzard. What's up to DSR? And G-Lo. Gripping more wood than that boy Pinocchio. Pull out that gas, they make a nigga dance. I stay strapped up just like Shabo's pants. Candy Paint, Mountain Dew, turn your head, it's cold red. Went to sleep with my grin and turn to a water bed. Laid back players, it's tatted on my arm. Thinking half a meal for my damn chain and charm. I eat some hard shells just like Taco Bell. A blind man could hear me if he was reading braille. Laid back players, that's LBP. Clap twice, my truck shake like Ali. Gucci shades on my eyes when I'm in the sky. I'm the smell when you go over the bridge of 35. That means I'm the shit you all the stars need to quit. You a shit you on the mic, boy, and I'm a pin. I got pool in the street just like a tow truck. Like a G-Unit member, I'm young, but full of buzz. I'm the real young star. And nigga, that's the stuff. If you got a problem with it, bitch, you can holler at me, bro. It's getting broke. Young star, the boy won, holler at me. Yeah, the first nigga to do it. Holler at me, yeah. La la la, 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 la la la.
What it do, what it do, what it do. It's your host, Vino the Most, back for another classic in the book at the SGI Talks. Game day number 9, part 2 of John Horse. And mother is an ancient Floridian, not an African. Now I just want to give a quick recap of part 1. I want to give a quick recap for part 1. So what put me in this mindset, we're talking about John Horse, a Black Seminole chief. Just like I said, I was listening to the Lumbee trial recognition the other day, and she had pointed out a couple of things as far as what the United States will recognize the tribe as. So I'm going to play that back real quick.
What I would like to do this afternoon is summarize very briefly what the characteristics of tribal existence are and give you confidence in the record that you have already that establishes those criteria. In a Supreme Court decision in 1901 called Montoya versus the United States, the Supreme Court gave us guidance as to what an Indian tribe is. The Supreme Court indicated that an Indian tribe consists of a body of Indians of the same race.
We got that. A body of Indians. And I'm saying Indian because I'm saying black people is Indians because some black people was found in the New World by Europeans, and by definition, the inhabitants that's found by Europeans get the term Indian. So that's why I say black Indian, but also we got historical documentation of in the National Archives with the army that was born against the Seminoles saying the deeds of black Seminoles or black Indians.
Factor number one, who are united in a community in a particular territory. Factor number
United in a community or particular territory. So we was down in Florida. We had our own villages and our own towns, and we also had our own town in the Indian territory in Oklahoma.
Number two, and who are united under
And also down in Brackettville, Texas.
one leadership or government. Factor number.
And we've been having different chiefs and tribes throughout the years, and they've been going on, and we can take it back to Negro Abraham. Matter of fact, we could take it back before that to a Garcon that was fighting over there at the Negro Fort. I also want to bring up the fact that right here.
Such sorrow, memory.
Someone also want to bring up this fact right here, where we had the chief, and that's kinfolk right there. Where we had the chief give a small breakdown of John Horse. Said that John Horse was raised in the village. Said that John Horse, whenever they did get ran up out of Wewoka, they had their rifles. The Black Indians had their rifles and told them that how you think that a man's supposed to die. So we got that right there, John Horse, and it was all coming back to. And it's all coming back to, just like I say, it brought me to this situation right here that I had read, Seeking a Solution, John Horse. And it goes back to this right here. And this is the same line that the Lumbee is pushing. And he was pushing that same line as far as being recognized and getting federal funding. As an Indian tribe, and it's going back to the 1844. And also with the Black Warriors of the Seminoles, also demonstrated with this that that the Black Seminoles wasn't slaves, that they had their own guns, but they came down here, and the way they try to depict us is, okay, yeah, the black people was just slaves. These black people was just like everybody else. Y'all was slaves. If y'all wasn't slaves to the white people, y'all was slaves to the Indians. So I was showing this old documentation in the early 1990s where we got Black Seminoles stating their own history of what was passed down to them by their ancestors. Now, I also brought up with this situation right here, as far as, okay, so they said, okay, well, if they not slaves, who are they? And I was pointing out within this little bill right here is that This is the first Indian agent that was in Florida, Gad Humphreys, and he was reporting whenever he was going to the villages and going to these places where these black Indians was. He was saying that they didn't demonstrate as far as being a runaway, and also he was showing that the people was faking bill of sales to be able to try to say that somebody was their slave, coming with fake paperwork, and also just kind of swindle and trying to bogart to be able to get slaves. So with this right here, I was just showing that the people wasn't slaves and that the people was living in the villages. They wasn't coming from Georgia, coming from nowhere else. They was already there whenever the first Indian agent came into Florida. And then with this right here, the notices of Florida, you can see that like I say, they try to say, well, if they not slaves, what are they? I'm saying that these are the ancient Floridian people that's already been down in Florida. The Yamasees. Within this book right here, this dude right here, M. Cohen, he was the soldier that fought in the Seminole War, the Second Seminole War. And this was the first book that was written right after the Second Seminole War. And within this book, they demonstrating that the Yamasees is black people in Oklahoma. And it was also pointing out about King Payne and about how one of his wives was a Yamasee woman, a black lady. He had a couple of kids with her. But I wanted to point out that fact with the King Payne, we got the Treaty of Landings, the Treaty of Lands, the Treaty of Payne's Landing. And it's like I say, within this book right here, is showing that the Yamasee, they trying to say that the Yamasees are they slaves. Just because they black people, they trying to put the slave label on them. But they just the folks. You know what I'm saying? That they probably had I ain't gonna say they had a disagreement, but like I said, when the Europeans came through, the game changed as far as what they could get for black people. So, but within these particular little groups, the blacks and the Indians stuck together, and they wasn't fucked up about it, and they fought for it together. But I was just pointing out with this book right here that the Yamasees is black people, and we connecting it to the King Payne cow keeper with his bow legs, and how they wives was black, and their kids was mixed. And this is the same get down. This is the same structure that John Horse come from. The same structure that John Horse come from. Within this book right here, they just kind of speaking up on the Yamasees, saying that they the ancient people, the ancient Floridians, and stuff like that. Just kind of just putting a more stamp on who is these people down here. Well, shit, these are the Yamasees. These are the ancient Floridians. These are, these are the black people that have been captured from down there and been enslaved throughout the United States and within the islands. And then with Aunt Betsy Payne, just like I say, I was bringing up the Payne thing because it came to an interview where the same thing is going on now, where they questioning me and my folks, and they saying, hold on, you look like an African, but you trying to say you a Seminole. And we got a person back in the 1890s that's giving up the same, just giving up the same game and saying, yeah, I'm a Seminole, and not saying that they something else. Even though they saying, oh yeah, you look like a full-blood African, but she's saying that, nah, I got Seminole in my blood. So that's just telling me that she is saying that she from here. And she was also, married to Chief Payne, which was King Payne's son, who I was talking about, and it's the connection from the Yamasees and the Black Indians already being connected to them that's why she is in the position that she is in. And that's why I'm saying that John Horse's mother is an ancient Floridian, not an African. These is black people that's already in Florida, that been in Florida. And we got some part, and we have somebody that was live that did an interview that was born in the 1790s that did the interview in the 1880s, and we dealing with the same situation now. But she stood on that she got Seminole in her blood. And then right here, when I had showed about the Georgia historian, the white woman that had been doing research into the indigenous maroon communities and saying that they indigenous maroons, they indigenous black people. These are black people that was here, and it's a lot of signs that's showing with tribes like the Tabaka, and like the saying that the Cuba Indians that came in Florida, you know, stuff like that. And, you know, kind of pointing out that this is maroon type of behavior, you know, that they exhibiting. And what we know is what a maroon is a black person within America. But it's documentation where, just like I say, they said that these are the bad Indians, that these are the Cimarroons, and stuff like that. But they talking about black people from America that's found in America. And that's what I was pointing out with that. Now, this is what all John Horse come from. This is where John Horse comes from. He come from that whole background like that right there. As far as his peoples, this from Florida, the ancient Floridians, either Tabaka or the Yamasee or the Chimicors or the Oklahoma or any other ancient Floridian tribe that they would say is extinct or that had got demolished, or I didn't say demolished, but got destroyed, or it is no more. Those are the black Indians that's indigenous, the indigenous maroon communities that then had, that then had this terroristic act done to us on our homeland. So that's just a recap of part one. Now, man, I'm finna just kind of just, we finna get through this whole little story right here. I'm gonna go on and, go on let the translate, go on and tell the story. But it's just some, the documentation about the history, about the folks. It's just more, it's just kind of more into the details of what was kind of going on at the time. And I had pointed out before I had ended part one, what I had really kind of came here for was for the, was to show this right here. Okay, yeah, that's what I wanted to show before I had got up out of here last night, was that the, putting the end to, the history saying that the black Indian, that the black Seminoles was slave to the Seminoles down in Florida, and that, that we was, fucked up like that within their little system. And it wasn't that, but it's like I say, they got to dress it up within history, and they had to dress it up within the society back then, because they just couldn't have, I ain't gonna say wow black people, but black people with guns running through people's states, doing whatever they wanted to do, being drunk and, just, having their way. That wasn't gonna reside in particular parts of the South, in the slavery, in the slave countries. Because we got stories from, whenever we did first get to Arkansas, that the Arkansas governor had wrote a letter back to the president or back to DC, like, hold on, why you got these blacks out here and they basically is lawless, but y'all sending them out here and they got guns and they kind of we don't know, they was worried about that. So just like how I was proving everything up as far as in that part one, there's more justification. Since 1847, we're talking about Marcellus Duval. Duval had been working with his brother, an attorney, to help Indians gain title to individual black Seminoles. Now, if they was already slaves in Florida, they wouldn't have needed his help for nothing. He had to come in and teach them how this process works and how it works. Now, once we got to Florida, once we got out here, Oklahoma, to the Indian Territory, it was a whole different story. You know what I'm saying? That's why I also brought up when John Horse in 1844 left from here and went to DC to say, hold on, we need our land that you promised in that grant. Basically, it's that funding, and we need to be separate from this tribe that you're trying to put us with, because we've been a separate people for almost 100 years. So that's why I was bringing this up. But I'm just kind of just let this whole little thing and kind of hot and gonna kind of speak up on a couple of little things, to kind of make it make sense. Which everything you already heard I said in part one. I ain't switching on nothing like that. But we're free to just look at more details and what happened to the black Seminoles during that time and kind of what they went through. Make sure that you're polled up and rolled up. I'm so glad that you showed up to comment, like, subscribe, tell a friend and do it again.
Christmas Day, 1837. Nearly 400 black and Indian warriors hide deep in the swamps of Florida, preparing to face Colonel Zachary Taylor and 1,000 U.S. regulars. The two sides are about to fight the decisive battle in the Second Seminole War, the bloodiest, most costly Indian conflict in U.S. history. But this is not just an Indian war, it is also a slave uprising, the largest that the country has ever seen, or ever will see.
A slave uprising, the largest, but they don't talk about this. They talk about the Underground Railroad. They talk about Nat Turner, and there's no shade on none of that. There's no shade on none of them black people and what they went through. There's no shade on none of that. But just like I say, they never put this out. Now they putting this stuff out. Now it's starting to be, we had to find the history, or it was history that was tucked. But just like I say, whenever I had got certain little information as far as coming up in high school and stuff out here, not getting from the folks, but just getting it from general education that we get. You hear about the Indians and all these wars. They never really talked about the Seminole War, but they just said like it was just another Indian war. But you see how they highlight Osceola, and they got him on a horse, and they got him as the mascot for Florida State, and it's a certain little look. But as you see, they talking about it's not just the Indian War, but it was a slave uprising, and the largest in the country has ever seen. Now, I also bring in questioning with that because, they try to say that, when all the slaves had ran away from South Carolina and Georgia to where it was the whole state of Florida was black slaves. Damn near. What it do, milestone thoughts, hit the mall, everything he bought. But they trying to say that basically because there's so many instances where they coming in and doing raids and they taking away hundreds of blacks, the Creeks. They coming in and taking hundreds of blacks at a time, thousands, and enslaving them, and also the government also, not just the Creeks, but also soldiers in the government took away a lot of black people from Florida that was living off the land, that was growing corn, squash, pumpkin, and sugar cane. And just like I also pointed out that these people wasn't slaves. They tried to say us a slave uprising. They wasn't slaves. The first Indian slaves, they demonstrated when he went to the villages, they wasn't runaways, that these are people that's from this culture. That's the first Indian slave agent that had went into Florida. Seen this.
For 3 years, hundreds of black rebels allied with Seminole Indians have fought the U.S. Army to a standstill. Known as the Black Seminoles, these fugitive slaves and free blacks have defied the country's leading generals and inspired terror across the South. For white soldiers, they have been the most fearsome enemies of the Seminole Alliance. The Negroes, from the commencement of the Florida War, have, for their numbers, been the most formidable foe, more bloodthirsty, active, and revengeful than the Indian. For them to surrender would be servitude to the whites, but to retain an open warfare, secured to them plunder, liberty, and importance. Lieutenant John T. Sprague.
Now, I'm not gonna say that it wasn't no Africans that didn't join, that came through, that ended up, being a part of it, because they did. But what I'm also saying, what I'm gonna keep saying, is that majority of the blacks was blacks that was already in Florida. It was blacks that was already in Florida. Now, some did come in during that time because that's kind of, during that time when they had that flux, where I would say that most of the Africans did come late in the game, but these is people that was already here. That's found, and this is going back to, just like I say, I take it back to, matter of fact, the historian had took it back to Ponce de Leon, when Florida was first found, talking about the maroon communities. But just like I say, it was other blacks that came from Africa. But, and I'm gonna keep on saying, and I ain't gonna never stop saying it, it was already blacks in America. That's on the fact. And it ain't gonna never stop. And I'm gonna keep on demonstrating and show what I show.
By late 1837, the leader of the Black Seminoles is John Horse. Already this recklessly brave warrior of mixed African and Indian descent has escaped from Florida's strongest prison, defied American treachery, and re-energized the Black resistance. But on this Christmas Day in 1837, John Horse and his Indian allies are outnumbered almost 3-1. What can he possibly hope to win? Surely not freedom for his followers, a marginal group of black rebels fighting the agents of the slaveholding South.
So they try to make it seem like a nigga didn't have no choice but to be a slave and all that old type of shit. Niggas wasn't gonna stand up and kind of get down for whatever they was gonna do. I mean, it's like I say, this is kind of like the narrative that they try to put out there. You know, they try to put out the narrative just like how they just put out there, well, he was mixed with African, but they never showed no type of true source. You know, they always try to say, come with documentation. They don't show a true source that say, yeah, his mama came here during this time, or her parents was woo, 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 woo. None of that. It's just, are they black slave? They got to be African. Just like how I was showing about how they was painting the Yamasees and saying they was black people, but off the top they was just slaves to the motherfucking Seminoles. That old type of stupid ass shit. And trying to say, oh yeah, they were slaves to the Seminoles, they had to pay tribute. If them, you know what I'm saying? Like if they didn't give up half of their little crop or whatever, they little farm thing, then they was gonna do something to them. Like, come on. Like, this shit crazy. They just part of the tribe. And they doing what everybody else doing. They had to get together, everybody bringing their little part. That's just what that is. But you know, just because they black, they gotta put the slave narrative and try to put us in this whole little twist. But his mother is an ancient Floridian, either from the Tobagas, or the Yamasees, or the Akawala, or the Timacuas, or any other ancient Floridian tribe that they say is extinct or destroyed.
The Black Seminoles may seem marginal today, but they were well known to the leaders of early America. 7 of the country's first 8 presidents wrote policies dealing with this troublesome group of armed, semi-autonomous blacks. In all, 11 presidents, from Washington to Lincoln, dealt directly or indirectly with the rebels. One of the first treaties in U.S. history, the Treaty of New York, 1790, sought to recover black Seminoles from Florida. Washington, who signed the document, followed up by dispatching his Secretary of State, Thomas Jefferson, to negotiate further with Spain for their recovery. Years later, it was even reported that one of Washington's own slaves might have escaped to Seminole territory. Subsequent presidents waged war on the rebels, brokered peace with them, and oversaw crucial rulings on their legal status.
Y'all find it very interesting. They say that 7 presidents was dealing with these people, but you never hear about them in history. You never hear about these people. In history, you got 7 presidents. This had to be a big deal. Semi-autonomous. See how they just try to throw the whoop in there? To recover black Seminoles from Florida. I'll tell you, this being a play. This being an area to where they can come to be able to load up on slaves to make money. And the government came last. Then they tried to shut it down. But they last in the game. They last in the game. And then gonna say some crazy ass shit. And then gonna say some crazy ass shit and gonna say one of George Washington's slaves went down to Florida and snuck off to Florida. A nigga from Virginia. I thought these niggas was running up north to Canada. Now one of George Washington slaves end up being a Seminole. But I'm thinking why they putting that type of terminology on a nigga is because it was Maroons and Black Indians all through the East Coast and the Southeast. And in the South. And they was called Maroons. Maroon communities. That's why I push the multi-Maroon American. MMA note. MMA note. Multi-Maroon American.
From 1776 to the closing of the Texas frontier in the 1880s, the Black Seminoles played a fascinating, at times paradoxical role in American history. As quasi-free African Americans, they often found themselves in armed conflict with a country that was the cradle of world liberty. From the Revolutionary War through the age of Andrew Jackson, they opposed the United States through violence, rebellion, and sometimes terror. In the 1840s they became allies of the U.S. Army in Oklahoma and Florida, but the partnership could not protect them. Ultimately, the twin tides of manifest destiny and slavery forced the Black rebels to seek freedom in Mexico. Struggling for survival on three frontiers: the Southeast, 1812 to 1838, the West, 1838 to 1850, and the Southwest, 1850-1880s. The Black Seminoles were like a shadow soul of the expanding American empire. Politically and historically, the country did not want to recognize its shadow. As a group, the rebels raised uncomfortable ideas: the threat of slave revolt, the nightmare of Indians and blacks uniting, the contradiction of American freedom, founded on the backs of African slaves. And so the national consciousness suppressed nearly all memory of the Black Seminoles, through ideological trends, censorship, and even legal measures. Briefly prominent during the rise of the abolitionist movement, 1836 to 1863, the group quickly faded from mainstream awareness. By the 1900s, they were a mere footnote to history.
Because they were the natives. And these niggas gotta push a certain agenda. They telling you right here. They telling you right here. Now, how this group didn't get the rollout story, Hollywood story, fought for their freedom, pushed back, killed, sat down at the table with the people, the first ones to go federal, got shipped out to a whole nother place to get patrolled, to try to break us up, doing everything to break us up and to infiltrate. this particular group, and we got all these abolitionists from up north, coming out with all these newspaper stories. Nat Turner, Harriet Tubman, and all these other rebellions they done had. But the largest one don't get nothing because the largest one they talking about black Indians in the primary documents. They not saying they from somewhere else. It's a turning point. It's a turning point in American history. Just like how we just had a turning point in motherfucking 2020. How shit just changed. It's like a whole new type of world we living in. The same shit. And it got to do with these communists, these libertarians, these even though they pushed a strong line to help black people back then, I ain't gonna front that. But they had a certain narrative that they was gonna paint. They was not gonna talk about the black natives that was found in America. They pushing a straight African American, a straight African slavery ideology, slavery to these people, to any black person, slavery. You gotta be at a certain position within the society at that time. What they say? They say, so the national consciousness suppressed. Why is they suppressing a great story like this if they talking about black people freedom? This should be the #1 headliner. And you know what? You still ain't heard nothing big about these people. They ain't came out with no movie. They ain't came out with no cold books. Because they not fit to glorify black people getting at the army. They not fit to glorify black people saying that they from the land and that they Indians. They not fit to glorify that. These niggas doing everything. These niggas so open. These niggas still ain't open to put that out. This is big boy history. This will change the mindset of the peoples. That's why the motherfucking Seminole chief back a long time ago said that them niggas wanted all the black Indians out the tribe because it was going to be too many blacks that was going to be able to claim Seminole. Once we get this shit popping, every nigga in this motherfucker gonna be talking about they Seminole or Maroon. Cause niggas is from the turf and niggas put it down. Niggas was found. Here. They say that the niggas was growing corn, squash, and pumpkin and sugar cane. Niggas trying to bury us for real. How the hell we fade away from mainstream? Matter of fact, I'm gonna go back to these pictures after I finish these up because we supposed to really dig into this shit, man. Because they playing and they also putting it right back in the nigga face.
Americans would remember the revolts led by Nat Turner and the white abolitionist John Brown, but not the larger, more successful rebellion led by John Horse and the Black Seminoles. Somehow, only the smaller, failed uprisings entered the national consciousness. Even today, the vast majority of American scholars, black and white, unconsciously follow the nod of a Southern-dominated tradition when they discuss slave rebellions, overlooking the uprising inspired by the Black Seminoles, though it was the largest in U.S. history.
The largest. But they not gonna rep it because these blacks are saying, I'm a Seminole, just like how we had Long Live Aunt Betsy Payne that had got questioned about her lineage back in the 1890s. And she say, hold on, yeah, I may look like somebody you call African, but I'm Seminole. I got Seminole in my blood. That's what the OG said. She didn't say nothing else. They ain't fighting and saying, all right, we tripping. We ain't really feeling about what's going on over here. Take us back over there to Africa. How that was never a suggestion. If they trying to say that these people is Gullah Geechees. The first warriors that's coming off boats and learning how to speak Indian languages and starting their own villages. It should be getting crazy. Hold on.
Even in the 1830s, when the Black Seminoles were just starting their epic quest for freedom, their struggle was not widely known. Informed Americans followed the war in Florida, but few understood that rebellion.
Hold on, man. While I was popping on that, you know what I'm saying? It's like I said, they try to downgrade this Black Seminole shit. What was going on in Florida, but they highlight the motherfucking Underground Railroad. They highlight the shit going up north. So my question is, because I ain't from up north. You know what I'm saying? Now, whenever they was going up north and doing all that, is it just black towns up there, black cities, that they just formed from these so-called runaways? Where it was just so many where they had to write, it was a national glory story where so many slaves escaped and went up north. Did they ever form their own towns and villages? Or they just I guess they just paint the story that, you know, niggas went up north and, you know, hooked up with some cool white folks and, you know, everything was all good. They gave them jobs. They was able to live and be comfortable within the society in the major cities. That's the story. Niggas escaped. It was all good and comfortable. They was able to get jobs. They was able to join the army. But they ain't gonna talk about down there. They say that down there the whole state. Every general that's coming back, they niggas had to send so many different generals to fight these niggas. They had to keep sending different generals. Cause niggas kept failing to remove these niggas.
Even in the 1830s, When the Black Seminoles were just starting their epic quest for freedom, their struggle was not widely known. Informed Americans followed the war in Florida, but few understood that rebellious slaves and free blacks were involved, not just Seminole Indians. And so, on that fateful Christmas Day in 1837, as John Horse and his followers prepared to face Zachary Taylor, they were truly on their own. They were fighting for the greatest of all American ideals, freedom. Would they find liberty or death?
So they say they was fighting on their own, huh? So I guess that these so-called, what they was calling Indians, wasn't around, huh? Fighting on their own. Just like they say, when motherfucking Osceola got caught up, but they portrayed a picture like, oh yeah, Osceola was just running through shit. It was him and some Indians, him and these group of Indians, and it turned out these is black Indians. When Osceola got caught up, it was like 40 or 50 black Indians that got caught up with him, and it was like about 10 Indians, as far as like his sister, mama, and some kids and shit like that. I don't even think it was 10. 40 niggas. See, but if you don't look up under the rocks and shit, you ain't gonna know that it was black Indians. Ain't gonna know. See what this picture talking about. This. We got the Black Seminoles right here. 19th century illustration of the Battle of Lake Okeechobee. Okeechobee. See these other pictures real quick. Nat Turner. We got John Brown. Niggas got big books on these niggas. Niggas had small parties. Niggas kicked up a little dust. Niggas did their thing, going against the grain. But they ain't indigenous. I don't know, this nigga Nat Turner might be indigenous though. Stop hating on my nigga. Slave pen in Virginia, 1861 to 1865. Slaves were held here prior to being sold. Jail cell. Niggas been going fed. Out of 7 presidents, or the presidents that had to deal with the Black Seminoles. I did that on his own. John Horse. We got the herd massacre of the whites in Florida in December 1835. 100, including women and children, fell victim to the barbarous detail from an 1836 engraving depicting events from the enslaving uprising during the Second Seminole War, originally prepared.
almost a generation before John Horse's birth, in the early 1800s, a new community was just emerging in Florida, a group of free and fugitive blacks allied with Seminole Indians. Described variously as Seminole Negroes, Muskogees, Maroons, and Black Indians, they would come to be known as the Black Seminoles. Like other New World communities, the Black Seminoles forged their identity in a crucible of war, slavery, and hemispheric conflict. They rose to prominence after 1800, but their emergence was rooted in the very founding and settling of North America and in the contradictory promise of American freedom.
Now, I'm definitely going against, they talking about a new community, when we got the historian from Georgia talking about the indigenous maroon communities going back to when Florida was found by Ponce de Leon. Also showing these communities going through marinage or maroon type of situations and surviving maroon type situations. With Tobagas, the Yamasees, the Oklawala, and the Timacuas, and any other ancient Floridian tribe that they try to say that's extinct or destroyed. Muskogee, that's very interesting, man. I'm gonna really have to look deeper, look deep into that Muskogee for real though, because I think they playing with that also. I think that may be a cold little connection also. Who we got over here that got us over here? Got 4 Black Seminoles, fugitive slaves, Spain, Seminole Indians. My nigga got the waves already.
Free blacks were first reported living with Indians in Florida in the early 1700s. Very little is known about these early black pioneers, except that they were most likely fugitives from the Carolinas who sought freedom on Spanish soil. By taking to the wilderness, they contributed to an age-old tradition in the New World.
But that's interesting. You know, they try to say the early 1700s, but then they try to say before that, in the early 1800s, it was new communities. But now the first reports is in the early 1700s. So I guess they're talking about Fort Mose, but you already know I didn't already got that Fort Mose, and it's the earlier settlements and the earlier peoples was down there within the 1600s. You know, where they giving these, you know, as far as where they taking these people from, and enslaving them, about a 50K, and it's in a place called the Town of Africa. It's out of Carolina to Africa, where you have the Timacuas, where you have the Oklawala, and other ancient Floridian tribes from that area that was collected during that time frame. But you know, they try to not speak up on that time frame. They try to start in the 1700s with Fort Mose. But you know, we going back before that. My nigga with the waves. A rebel oh yeah, that's another thing they're just trying to put. Now they calling us the rebels. The rebels. You see all this old little goofy shit, instead of calling us what, as far as our tribe names. You know what I'm saying? They're not gonna do that. Because it's gonna cause a lot of questioning. It's gonna cause too much questioning. It's gonna cause too much questioning for the community, and they Don't have to renege.
Wherever African slaves were imported in the Americas, some escaped. In Brazil, Mexico, Suriname, and other colonies, fugitive slaves founded rebel communities that endured for generations. The Spanish referred to the members of these communities as cimarrons, or runaways. The British shortened cimarron to maroon, which is still in use today.
You know, I find it very interesting. They're talking about Suriname. They talk about Mexico, Brazil. I really ain't dug too much from Brazil. Talk about Mexico, like how I brought up the OG, Way. He come on here talking about, the blacks in Mexico. I done paid him a couple of times. Suriname, we up here talking about that Northeast South America. How they try to say, it's hella maroon communities over there. And then on top of that, how they gonna try to say within these areas that 96% of the area is unexplored, but they gonna try to tell us back whenever the people was going over there that they was finding black people, but they gonna say, well, these had to be runaways from that was already brought over here, and they been over there in that area, and that's why they found them, because that old stupid ass shit. But they finding the people there, and they living off the land and doing everything off the land. You know what I'm saying? They not coming. But I would be thinking that the people would be trying to come up with a system to try to get back to Africa. They done been and made a boat by now. It should have been niggas that done made a boat by now to get back to Africa. And also, just like I say, they talk about, oh yeah, the Maroons. Did I tell you the first Symeros Cimarrones down in Panama that was found? I'll tell you that the niggas was found before a white boy ever seen the Pacific Ocean. These niggas got the term maroon. These are niggas that's found. Literally, these niggas, the white boys just got these niggas exploring and found niggas and still gonna say, nah, nigga, y'all niggas ran away from somebody that was already here. On top of that, it's thousands of these niggas. But, they just try to put the blanket term on it. We're just gonna call them slaves. They runaways. Niggas just go with the story. Don't look into the story at all. They just run away. I'm going against, like I say, I know it was some people that came. It was some of the folks that did come through. But I'm highlighting that the folks that was already here. That's on the facts. Talking about maroons. Come on, man. 1839. And still in 2025, these niggas are saying that these areas, they talk about Suriname and all these areas over there in Northeast motherfucking South America, they unexplored. So whenever they do some exploring over there, and they come across some niggas, all they gonna say is, these ain't nothing but some niggas that done ran away, that done been in the woods for that long. And, they just runaways. They not really indigenous over here. They not really from here. They just been over here in this area so long, and ain't nobody messed with them. They been hiding so good to where none of the slave catchers, and they just left them alone forever.
England and Spain both tried to use Cimarron colonies to their own advantage. Sir Francis Drake initiated this tradition in 1572 after a community of free blacks rescued him on his famous voyage to Panama. Drake's men described the Cimarrons as valiant Negroes fled from their cruel masters the Spaniards. According to Drake's chaplain on the expedition, the Cimarrons nursed the explorer and his crew back to health, helped them attack a Spanish mule train loaded with gold, and even led Drake to the famous tree where he first saw the Pacific Ocean. Drake subsequently used Cimarrons as allies in his attacks on the Spanish at Panama, 1572, Cartagena and Florida, 1586. After the Florida attack, he deposited his black allies at the British colony of Roanoke in present-day North Carolina. This makes it quite possible that the descendants of these free black warriors were living in North America when the British founded their first permanent colony at Jamestown in 1605.
You see, you see that bullshit? How these niggas try to just change history right in our eyes. But I'm on top of that shit. We know the motherfucking most is on top of this shit. These niggas just tried to put the whoop in the game. If you wasn't looking, these niggas just threw way too much soda on that hoe. Fluff this motherfucker all the way up to make this motherfucker look good. But we finna take a smoke. We finna really get to this and really see what it's smoking like. And I'm saying it's some boo-boo. This ain't good work right here. This is not good work right here. Now, the people that be going against what I be saying, they would believe this off top. They would believe it off top, just like I told you right here. I told you the Cimarroons, I didn't even know they was even gonna talk about that. I just got done talking about the Cimarroons. 1572, right? But they didn't bring up within that same story, and I don't even know where they got that from, which they got this as far as dropping some niggas off. They got that from the History Channel. But they ain't showing no documentation. They just saying it. Okay. So, but let's get back to this 1572. So, with this same group, just like I just said, these are the people that they found in Panama before they seen the Pacific Ocean. Now, you see how they just try to put it in the Pacific Ocean with Sir Francis Drake. Way years later, they ain't talking about Balboa, though. They not talking about Balboa, who was the first white man to see the Pacific Ocean. Okay. Within that story, these Cimarroons, these black people saying that they've been beefing with these Spaniards for 80 years. It say it specifically, the number in the book, 80 years. It's going back to 1492. Now, I'm not saying because the niggas wasn't even over there in Panama in 1492. But the motherfuckers that wrote the motherfucking story, them niggas had to connect it back to goddamn, because whenever goddamn Christopher Columbus came through. But this is the whoop on the game because these niggas didn't get as far as discovering the Pacific Ocean in that Panama area after doing that, just exploring, was 1513. This nigga found the niggas over there. The people said that it's black people over there. The people said they've been having a regular wars with the people. As far as the Indians, they've been having regular wars with these black people. The goddamn Europeans was trying to say that they thought that the niggas was Ethiopian pirates that shipwrecked. But then we got this bullshit story at the bottom the real fluff in the game. Now they gonna try to say that. Now they're trying to say that Sir Francis Drake dropped off some black allies in the Roanoke, North Carolina, and trying to say that black people was already touched down in America doing their thing before 1619. But they ain't showing no documentation. Matter of fact, I done already showed the Sir Francis Drake book. Within that book, they never, which they talk about the situation about him going to Roanoke Island, and they talk about how he was beefing at St. Augustine and how he did whatever he did. Never talk about him dropping off no black people. A nigga gonna tell me that I had a debate with. A nigga gonna tell me the reason that they not a hating ass nigga, which if the nigga was living back then, the nigga would be a slave catcher. The nigga gonna tell me that the reason that the motherfucking niggas is not in the story because there's no need to put those black people within the story because that's not a highlight of his glory or legacy. But they trying to use it now in the year 2025. They trying to tell us because they try to say that it was either 700 to either 300. So that's a big gap right there. They saying 7 to either 3. Of people blacks that he dropped off to where he could have formed his own city and been a fucking king out of this world. Literally formed his own fucking city with that many people. And the nigga saying he just dropped the niggas off, and I guess, you know how they try to say, well, that's the reason. That's why I was always bringing up how that black, and there's no shot at that black professor, I forgot his name, from North Carolina A&T, how he was saying that there's black Indians in the Carolinas. But he's saying that it's only black Indians there because of Sir Francis Drake, but they ain't showing no documentation. They just saying it to justify why it's black people over there. They find it. And this goes to the motherfucking Black Seminoles. You know, just like I say, niggas was found in Florida. And, you know, they try to put this same story. They been running with this same playbook. But that shit ain't working no more on goal line, nigga. That shit is over with. That shit is over with, nigga. I'm catching these niggas in lies for real. Unless they show that documentation that Sir Francis Drake did that. This is cap. This is all fluff. This is all fluff. I promise you it ain't gonna smoke good. Yeah, this is the pain whenever Sir Francis Drake had went over there and this, you know, whenever he was doing his rampage and doing his pirating over there in the Central America, in the Panama, in the Cartagena, and you know, the Colombia, doing all what he do. And whenever you add up that many slaves, if it was that many slaves, that's like $1 billion fucking dollars today. $1 billion, like that's in the upper billions. That would have been in the upper billions. And they saying that a cutthroat nigga like that was supposed to be the first motherfucker, that's supposed to be the first Englishman to motherfucking deal with some fucking slaves. One of the first ones, him and his cousin, Walter Riley. They supposed to be one of the first English motherfuckers that deal with black slaves. And the nigga didn't keep it cutthroatish and start his own empire, but the nigga ended up going back to Panama and dying in Panama and living like a king in Panama, and they respected him big down in Panama, and these niggas treat him. He come from somewhere else. He got over on them niggas. Them niggas treat that nigga like a god over down there. Nigga got statues and everything. So you saying that this nigga had all this? He had the potential to start a goddamn city in a whole new land, don't nobody know, and becoming the first one, and he just let niggas free. They saying that he let the niggas free. And within that book, just like I say, it's a section within that book I done already highlighted on some of my other get downs. It's a section within that book before he leave to go to North America, to those areas. He tell the people that he dealing with as far as these Cimarroons, he tell them to go on a boat, get the things that y'all want, because there is no need for y'all where I'm going. It's in the motherfucking book that was copywritten in 1695. Oh, and within the book, it's not talking about nothing about no Africans. It don't mention nothing about in Africa. It don't mention nothing about no Africans within the book. It just say Negroes and Cimarroons. It don't say nothing about Africa or about no Africans. These niggas be playing. Niggas be playing big time. Right in the nigga face.
Spain made the next full-scale attempt to employ Maroon warriors in Jamaica from 1655 to 1660. When England ousted Spain from the island in 1655, the Spanish recruited Jamaica's free blacks as military allies. For 5 years the plan worked. The Maroons harassed the British, successfully staging guerrilla raids and then retreating to their mountain strongholds. The Black warriors were so effective that the Spanish discharged their own military early in the conflict. Unfortunately for Spain, however, the Maroons had their own interests at heart. When the British gave them a better offer in 1660, the Maroons joined with England and drove Spain permanently off the island.
What it do, Miss Demi coming through doing a shimmy. What it do, what it do. I really don't know too much about this Jamaica get down. But I'm pretty sure that the folks is from I'm pretty sure that the folks the first people is indigenous Maroons. Like I say, I don't know too much about this Jamaican get down. Jamaican Maroons. That's why I put the multi-Maroon American V-Note, MMA V-Note. Niggas was found over here from the top to the bottom. That's for shiggity.
Toward the end of the 17th century, as the Spanish pondered the fate of their North American holdings, they did not want to see a repeat of the Jamaican situation. Spain had founded the first European settlement in North America, at St. Augustine in 1565, but by the 1690s, Spanish power was in the midst of a long, steady decline. After 140 years, St. Augustine was still just a distant outpost of empire. Florida as a whole was thinly populated, poorly defended, and extremely vulnerable to British attack. The English colonies, meanwhile, were growing vigorously, thanks in large measure to a dramatic increase in the importation of African slaves.
So as you see, they talking about St. Augustine. They saying that it's, oh yeah, engine radio, what it do? Engine radio make the girl say, oh. Nah, what about the Cali bill? Well, I know they were talking about something about some reparations out there or something in Cali that Copper Draco kept putting on the table. But my nigga, but how they try to say, yeah, Florida really wasn't populated, you know what I'm saying? They because there wasn't nothing going on as far as they was in taking a lot of people there. It's you know, they wasn't getting a lot of it wasn't like they was getting a lot of crops from there. They wasn't getting no gold from there. You know, they was really about the gold. You know, they going everywhere where the gold is at. You know what I'm saying? So, but what I point out is that this is an area where they're taking slaves and where they've been taking slaves from this area going back to Ponce de Leon. And on top of that, I don't know if they gonna mention this within this get down, they not mentioning the town of Africa. Now, why would this be a place up there if it's thinly populated? They not dropping off slaves up there. It's not like a slave port. This is a military post. And I also pointed out that during that time, before leading up to that time, that it really wasn't a lot of, like, as far as like the blacks that was there, that they say would be like servants or whatever that was in St. Augustine or something like that. They say that majority of them got wiped out through malaria or whatever the other little disease out there. But they wasn't even that deep. But still at the same time, they're not even that deep. But then they talking about it's thousands of these indigenous people that's converting over whenever they coming through with these missions. And then on top of that, you got the first Indian slave raid that's coming from the Charleston people down to Florida. They coming to South Carolina to Africa, and they taking away slaves. Why is they coming down into the Florida area right by St. Augustine, and they ended up capturing 50, well, they said 50, they could be fluff, that could be a bullshit number. They said 50,000 that got took from goddamn 1680 to 1720, and within that same time frame, only 10,000 came from Africa to Americas that was spread from South America, Central America, and North America. Oh, damn, Cali trying to do that. Okay, I'm gonna have to look into that and do a build on that. I appreciate that one. That's the shit, they trying to do something. They trying to get a nigga vote for real. Some facts. But they doing that. They need to be pushing the Black Indian history on top of that. They need to be saying that black people was here before they got here. Yeah, they need to recognize that. Hopefully they do. I'm gonna keep putting it in their face. For the folks, the Spaniards looked north and saw the English slaves they saw. So you see how they just try to they basically lying right here. Because they trying to say that some niggas is coming off, some Africans is coming off the boat. And you know, they try to say some shit like, well, you know that but the king came out and said if you were to make it to Florida, you know what I'm saying, that you was gonna be free. I'm thinking, how the hell these niggas coming off a damn boat know this play, know this move? They up here talking about during these times that niggas wasn't allowed to read books and niggas couldn't do this and niggas couldn't do that. You get your eyes gouged out if they catch you reading and doing all, they do all type of dumb shit. But niggas know to come to this particular settlement. Everybody running back, so-called, to this area. They know to come here. And they know about, plus they know about the religion. These niggas are trying to say, yeah, these are some Africans that they brought over that was already into the religion over there in Africa, man. Like, come on. These niggas just put too many twisted stories on it. Because, you know what I'm saying, these niggas trying to say, well, you know, they was warriors that was caught in the warrior tribe and all that. Well, shit, if they was warriors doing some warrior shit, these niggas wasn't no goddamn Christians or got no Muslims over there. If they was some tribal motherfuckers that they just rounded up, how the hell they know about the religion? These are the niggas that was coming from the missions that got enslaved doing the little wars and shit when niggas come down and took niggas up out of Florida. But because it's some black people, they say, oh yeah, these are some niggas that came. Nigga, these some Africans. Make sure that you're pulled up and rolled up. You know, I'm so glad that you showed up. To comment, like, subscribe, tell a friend, and do it again.
In 1693, the King of Spain seized the opportunity. Since the 1680s, runaway slaves from Carolina had been seeking refuge in St. Augustine. In 1693, the king officially welcomed such fugitives, issuing a declaration of freedom to all British slaves who fled to Spanish territory. Oh, that by their example and by my liberality others will do the same. As a result of the edict, a steady stream of fugitives began to make their way south to Florida. British colonists complained bitterly of the exodus. They even accused Spanish ambassadors of posting copies of the king's edict on trees near British plantations to encourage runaways.
Do you hear that crazy ass shit? Now these niggas putting up newspaper ads. These niggas putting up ads on the telephone post to say, come down here, you'll be free. You'll have your liberty. You'll come on. But they not gonna highlight Santa Catalina to Africa. They not gonna talk about the town of Africa down there. They not gonna talk about the times, during the times that the king was calling this place West India. They not gonna mention these terms in these type of situations. Why is they not calling what the king called it back then? But they try to just put a whoop in the game and say, since the 1680s, the runaway slaves from Carolina been seeking refuge at St. Augustine. They've been now St. Augustine in Pensacola, all the way up until goddamn Andrew Jackson get there, was the only lightweight so-called two cities that was popping. How the hell do some niggas once again know to go to St. Augustine, be in a rush to go to St. Augustine? Talking about they putting posts. Spaniards is coming through by the plantations and putting stuff on the trees to where people can come and read like they reading the newspaper. That's the story. Hold on, let me go back to that. What was in that picture? This is King Charles. This is King Charles. That's crazy. I thought that was a female. Yeah, so this was the person during that time that was calling Florida and that whole land. Florida, the islands, all that, West India.
By the 1720s, the presence of their former slaves in Florida, armed and free, no less thoroughly incensed the British planters. Free Spanish blacks, they insisted, were inciting their slaves to rebel, raiding their plantations, even conducting massacres. We formerly complained of their receiving and harboring all our runaway Negroes, wrote the president of the South Carolina Colonial Assembly in 1728, but since that they have found out a new way of sending our own slaves against us, to rob and plunder us. More.
Now the Spaniards are sending their own slaves, and because why they say they own slaves, because they feel that any black person is their slave. Them niggas ain't gotta really be the owners. Just any black person, a nigga, we the owners. They are the devil. They are pagans. They are heathens. They are uncivilized. We need their souls. They have no rights. They own nothing when we around. Now it's going back to the 1700s, free blacks just running through Florida. But all these free blacks, they saying, is coming from Carolina. You know what's so interesting? They not saying that these niggas is coming from you know what's this in Florida, you know, that ran away from some Spaniards in Florida. They not saying that. They keep emphasizing that the niggas is from the Carolina area. If it's black people in Florida, they from the Carolinas. They not from no runaways from those Spaniards. Have we read or heard anything about, say these black people, you know, that was, you know, just living free in Florida was just from the Spaniards. The Spaniards just had black people living free in Florida. And we know all the goofy ass shit that they've been doing to black people. But they just gonna let these niggas just be free. As long as they praise God up here, this is like a Jehovah Witness state up here. As long as you praying God, it's all good. We ain't tripping. You can live free. You can just do what you want to do. We ain't forcing you to do nothing. That's crazy. See, they can't say that. So now they saying that there's so many free blacks just running through this area, but all these niggas is coming from the Carolinas. Now they keep on moving the goalposts because they first started out 1800s, now it's the 1700s. Now they saying niggas been moving around since the 1680s, trying to get down to St. Augustine. Now it's the 1720s. It's just a whole bunch of free blacks that's running through this motherfucker. A whole bunch of free blacks that's running through this motherfucker. That's crazy. Okay, the Crow-Mountain, Crow-Mountain, Free Negro, Ranger. Now they call him a Ranger. Nigga was a rebel. Now nigga a Ranger. 1794. This is down in Suriname, down in goddamn South America, Northeast South America. In places where they saying that 96% of the country is unexplored.
Overall, the British complaints revealed the effectiveness of King Charles's edict. By the 1730s, scores of black fugitives had found a home in Spanish Florida. Some settled with Indian allies outside of St. Augustine. Most settled in or around the city itself. The Spanish granted freedom to the Maroons, provided that they accepted the Catholic faith, and organized them into military companies under their own commanders.
Now the blacks are just free. At the same time, these niggas is so-called spending so much money to bring over Africans on a ship where 40% of the people gonna die. They say so-called 40% of the people gonna die. They gonna spend money to lose money just to bring over 60% of the people, but at the same time gonna let these people just be free. As long as they praise God. That's what they want us to believe. I ain't believing this. Try to say by 1730 they trying to talk about Fort Mose, but they never talk about Santa Catalina the African. They never talk about motherfucking the town of Africa in the Timacool area, the Oklahoma area, the ancient Floridian areas. The people they talk about is extinct. This is sickening. Granted freedom to the Maroon. In the 1770s, the Mexican officer and soldier from Cuba man, these niggas, man, crazy. Now they talking about some Spanish influence. What's the Spanish influence?
Cementing African-Spanish ties even further, in 1738, the residents of St. Augustine established Fort Mose, a military garrison manned by fugitive slaves and free blacks. The garrison and its accompanying town formed the first legally sanctioned free black community in the present-day United States. Mose was the first line of defense against the British colonies. Its black warriors promised King Charles, we shall at all times be the most cruel enemies of the English, and that we shall risk our lives in service to your majesty until spilling the last drop of our blood in defense of the great crown of Spain and our holy faith.
The great crown of Spain, but these people is so-called the first people to so-called enslave black people throughout the world, that they not from in the new world. Talking about Fort Mose again, but never talk about Santa Catalina de Africa or the town of Africa, which is in the same terrain and is 50 years before. But they gotta put this because whenever they talking about the town of Africa, they gotta bring up the slave raids. And they gotta justify where these people go and who are these people. Hold on. And you know what also make it funny, also within the same area, they got a place called Nombre de Dos. Just like in Panama.
Britain took action against the Maroons during the North American phase of the War of Jenkins' Ear, 1739 to 1742, when British forces under Colonel James Oglethorpe attempted to take St. Augustine, capture its free blacks, and destroy Mose. The English king directed his orders specifically at the black fugitives of Florida, instructing Oglethorpe to spare no personal labor nor danger towards freeing Carolina of a place from whence their Negroes were encouraged to massacre their masters and were openly harbored after such attempts. The British captured and briefly held Fort Mose, but the Negroes fought hard to regain it. In a decisive battle in 1740, the blacks retook Mose, killing 75 British soldiers in the process. British agents were especially dispirited to report the discovery of decapitated and mutilated corpses on the scene, revealing the bitter end of their countrymen.
Same thing happened within the Seminole War, right? General Day. But what's so funny about this Oglethorpe, who was the first governor of Georgia, when he came down, he seen more than one black villages. And just automatically put the runaway term on him. Ain't never seen the people a day in his life. Don't know nothing about the folks. but automatically run away. We got to get that money. And that's the cutthroat. And then on top of that, the niggas ran the niggas up out of there. Let's get to that. They ain't gonna talk about that. Now shit coming out. Well, when this happened, with goddamn 1740, now shit coming out. Goddamn 300 years later. You at a town in council. Niggas had a council in St. Augustine. I wonder who built the castle.
The first fortress at Meuse was destroyed in the fighting of the 1740s, but another was rebuilt in 1752. Throughout this period, despite a series of coordinated British attacks, the Black Warriors of Meuse were never conclusively defeated. They ably defended St. Augustine, repulsing the armies of their former masters. Word of their courage spread to the British plantations. For desperate slaves to the north, Meuse secured a fortress of hope.
You know what makes it so funny? It seems like, they trying to give credit. They trying to give credit to the Spanish is the reason that, that the blacks were successful at fighting them off and kind of doing what they was going to do. Which it didn't be in many instances with the black Indians within the area where they didn't got fought off and, they just didn't were able to come through and enslave. But they ain't gonna highlight them failures, attempts. They not gonna highlight those failure attempts.
Throughout the 1700s, meanwhile, the British pursued a number of policies to recover fugitives from Florida. They offered scout bounties to Indian slave hunters. In 1732, they founded Georgia as a free state, hoping that its all-white towns would serve as a useful buffer between the Carolinas and Florida. Finally, in 1763, European intrigues accomplished what the British slaveholders could not. Under the Treaty of Paris, Spain ceded Florida to England.
So we got how they try to say, oh yeah, the slaves was just living with the Indians. But the Indians are slave hunters. But the Indians, the slave hunters, but how they just try, oh yeah, the niggas, they just wandered off into the woods and they was just living with the Indians. Well, nobody tripping. Matter of fact, they say, oh yeah, the niggas was they slaves, but they was like distant slaves to where they really wasn't tripping, but they still had to pay tribute, even though that the nigga stayed 50 miles away from the nigga. See, that's the type of goofy ass shit they just try to say. Now England. Now let's see what they're talking about with England. Hold on.
When Spain ceded the territory, almost all of its free blacks sailed with their Spanish allies to Havana. Temporarily, the fugitive slaves of North America lost an important refuge. Within a few years, however, they would find a new haven and, in a Native American community that was just forming, they would gain a new ally in the fight against American bondage.
So now they're saying, that's crazy. So now they're saying, that's crazy. So now they're saying that the free blacks, that all the free blacks, well, almost all, sail with the Spanish to Havana once the British took control. See, that's what I'm saying. See, they try to justify, once again, why black people would be in these areas. But when they finding these black people, as far as they living off the land, they living like Americans. They dress like the Americans, all that. But, with that slave narrative and that slave terminology, how they say, oh yeah, black people is the devil, all this old crazy ass shit. Sick in the head. And that's why I stay read between the lines and second guessing everything, even though a nigga using they sources. I know they like to come with the trickery and the fuckery.
The Seminole Indians began to emerge as a distinct community in the late 1700s. Without a cohesive identity at first, they gradually formed as a coalition of tribes from the southeast. A few members of the coalition descended from Florida's pre-colonial residents, such as the Timucuas, Apalaches, and Uchis, communities that were decimated by colonial conflicts but never completely wiped out. The vast majority of people who came to be known as Seminoles, however, were recent emigrants. Driven south by civil conflicts and the allure of a free wilderness, Hichiti and Muskogee speakers descended on the region in waves from 1740 to 1820. Most of the newcomers had strong ties to the Muskogee Creeks of Alabama and Georgia. Even after the Seminoles gained their own identity, many were still referred to as Lower Creeks, designating their cultural origins to the north.
But that don't make no sense because Seminole come from Cimarron, which they talking about the Maroons, which I done got that with the historian from Georgia, talking about the indigenous Maroon communities that been in Florida, that been going through this old pushed up out of their original land areas and finding themselves within a Maroon type situation. Now it's funny how they talking about the Timucuas, the Uchis, which we done seen a picture of the Uchis. We know that's a black person within that picture. But they try to say that these tribes are decimated, nearly completely wiped out. Like I say, how I was showing, how he was saying, oh yeah, this destroyed, this tribe is destroyed, this is extinct. These are part of the ancient Floridian people. It's like I say, these people come through with the guns and come in enslaving the Yamasees, just like I pointed out within that first book, and how we get to Aunt Bessie Payne, how she's connected to King Payne while she's in the area, because these are the Yamasee folks. And they saying that the Yamasees is the slave to these so-called people that's coming in.
The nucleus of the Seminole Nation formed in the 1740s and 1750s on the Alachua Savanna in central Florida. Oconee Creeks first visited the region while participating in military raids with the British. The Oconee chief Cowkeeper found the fertile and remote wilderness to his liking and decided to settle. Cowkeeper and his followers started the town of Lachue, or Alachua, and later Cuscowilla. These are just two of the many Seminole names that survive in Florida today.
So just like how I was pointing out, Cowkeeper, Bowlegs, talking about they was enslaving the Yamasees. These are the same people that didn't know what was going on when the people started calling them black terms, which is Seminole and Cimarron. Them type of terms, there was black terms at that time. They didn't know what was going on. But that's interesting. They say that the nucleus formed in the 1740s, 1750s with the Oconee when they first visited while participating with the military raid with the British. Like I said, they coming in and enslaving the peoples. And that's why I say that John Horse's mother is an ancient Floridian and not an African, because he was raised within this Oconee tribe. The sub chief, I'll show you the video with the sub chief, and the chief was on there talking during a John Horse Highway Memorial, or the highway revealing, when the sub chief got on there and said that he was from, I guess that, we got about like 12 tribes, but 12 clans within the Seminole. You know what I'm saying? He come from one of them. I forgot which one he said he come from, but he was saying that John Horse was raised with the Oconee people. Now that's just telling me that they came in and got his peoples whenever they came in with the British. That's how the British got their slaves, most of their slaves, majority of them, as far as within their area. But that's definitely interesting, because it's like I say, it's definitely interesting because they're talking about Cowkeeper, which is King Payne's brother, which, like they say, they coming in with the British with the guns and then enslaving the Yamasees, enslaving the Timacuas, enslaving the Ocklawalas. And these people ended up being with the people, but in their eyes, they kind of trying to label these people as slaves, but they really not slaves. You know what I'm saying? These are the folks that they done had us kick up some dust, and that's just how things going. It's gonna come through and get the peoples, and that's just how it's rocking. But that's interesting that they said that the nucleus, because when John Horse had went when John Horse had went to D.C. in 1844, when he was fighting for the land grants and to be recognized separate from the Creek, and was saying that they were the different peoples. Then them people going back 100 years. So that's interesting. They say that the nucleus is 1740s and the 1750s.
British agents first described Cowkeeper's people as Seminoles sometime between 1765 and 1771. The British understood the term as a variation on Cimarron, the same word that the Spanish used for runaway slaves. Loosely translated as runaway or wild, the title identified the Florida Indians as breakaway Creeks. Seminoles have always preferred to think of themselves as emigrants or pioneers, rather than runaways. Today, Seminole tribal historians say that Isti Seminole is a Muskogee phrase for the free people, meaning that the Seminoles were never subject to European domination.
You know, that's funny that they say that. When the first term, when they was just on here talking about Cimarroons down in the Panama area. And they talking about the Maroons and the Blacks. But now, for some reason, these particular people that so-called, that was called something else, now they called this term that some black people is called, now they the people. Now they the folks. They're crazy.
The young and relatively obscure nation gained international notoriety following the visit of the American naturalist William Bartram in 1774. Residing with Cowkeeper, Bartram sought permission to travel freely over the Alachua savanna collecting flowers and plants. Cowkeeper gave him permission, and also a nickname Puc Puggy, or the Flower Hunter.
This is during the same time where they enslaving the ancient Floridians. You know, we got Aunt Bessie Payne that's kicking that knowledge. That was one of the wives of Chief Payne. She was a Yamasee.
For his part, Bartram wrote glowing prose about the Seminoles and their homeland. He described the Elysian fields of their territory as a paradise on earth. The extensive Alachua savanna is covered with waving forests and fragrant orange groves, rising from an exuberantly fertile soil. At the same time are seen innumerable droves of cattle, herds of sprightly deer, squadrons of the beautiful, fleet Seminole horse, flocks of turkeys, civilized communities of the sonorous, watchful crane, mixed together, appearing happy and contented in their enjoyment of peace, till disturbed and affrighted by the warrior or man. In the Seminoles themselves, Bartram saw a complete projection of the noble savage. They seemed to be free from want or desires. No cruel enemy to dread, nothing to give them disquietude, but the gradual encroachments of the white people. Thus contented and undisturbed, they appear as blithe and free as the birds of the air. Their visage, action, and deportment form the most striking picture of happiness in this life. Full excerpt. While Bartram's descriptions seem naive today, in the 18th and 19th centuries they were celebrated as an image of man's ideal nature. His passages on the Seminoles particularly influenced the English Romantics Samuel Taylor Coleridge and William Wordsworth. In fairness to Bartram, it should also be noted that he met the tribe during a golden age and based his observations on a warm, personal experience. The early Seminoles inherited their civic and social structures from the Creeks. Communities were structured around the square grounds, or talwa, where the town leader, or Miko, presided over the council house. Mikos met once a year in a general assembly to decide all important affairs of state. This was one aspect of Creek government that the Seminoles did not readily duplicate, since their community lacked cohesiveness until the pressures of war united the various bands in the early 1800s. Seminole Mikos, like their Creek forebears, tended to come from restricted clans, making the office of civic leadership hereditary. War leaders, on the other hand, established themselves by their deeds. While there were no official ranks for warriors, men could rise through 4 classes until they reached the highest status, Tustanugi.
Now, how the hell was the Black Chiefs? How the hell was Black Warriors having these names? No, there was a lot of Black Warriors that had these Indian names, that Tuskegee name. And you know what makes it so funny? The people that be giving these people these names, these be like the uncles. How they giving somebody an outsider a name and a position of authority over their nephews and their cousins? You know why? Because these are their nephews and cousins. These niggas just did the most goofiest shit. And these niggas smoked out right now. Being smoked out. I ain't gonna say all of them, but there's too many of them because the niggas been hating on us too long. Ever since these woods got over here, that's what it's looking like to me. Oh, it's all good. We just got done hearing about, yeah, they in it's communities in the 17, in the early 17s, and they hooking up with the Indians. They living with the Indians and all this old type of shit. But now they're gonna try to paint it like, oh yeah, they was just doing their own thing.
When Bartram met the Alachua Seminoles, He did not report any fugitive blacks living among them, yet by 1773, almost all of the pieces were in place that would lead to the African Seminole Alliance. Only one event remained that would spur the relationship into place: the founding of the American Republic. The birth of freedom in the United States spawned a different form of liberty on the country's southern frontier. The process started with the Revolutionary War against Britain, 1775 to 1783.
So who was the so-called blacks hooking up with? What Indian tribe was they hooking up with in the early 1700s? Before this 1773 shit. Who was they hooking up with? Whenever the governor came down and was tripping from Governor Oglethorpe. What Indian tribes was they hooked up with then? Or was them just the black tribes? But now so-called this group that just got her is the black people's allies. Now, it's like, come on, man. These niggas just keep putting whoop into the game, man. I'm catching all this shit.
The British had initially taken possession of Florida in 1763, a decade before the Revolution. At first, they tried to stop slaves from escaping to the region. When war broke out with the Americans, however, the British changed their policy. After 1775, they agreed to grant freedom, land, and military commissions to all blacks who took up arms against the rebel colonists. America's founding fathers may have been fighting for liberty, but their definition was too abstract for thousands of slaves, who chose British freedom over American ideals.
Another thing, these niggas keep putting whoop into the game. Keep putting whoop into the game. Now, you got a situation where these niggas done took over the place, right? They're saying, yeah, in 1763, we done took this motherfucker over. It's so-called slaves. They say it's slaves still running down here. They tried to stop the slaves from escaping to the region. They tried to tell the slaves, even though these are people that's taking slaves and that's so-called getting black people from Africa and bringing them over and all this old shit. But every time some niggas just coming to Florida, these niggas get set free. How that happen? Every time some niggas come to Florida, it's an arrangement. Now we gonna grant you your freedom. From the British to the Spanish to any other white boy that come down here. If you a nigga, you come down here, we fucking with you. How is that? You know why? Cause these is the indigenous people that they trying to get on their team. Ain't no goddamn nigga just coming down and nigga now we trying to fuck with you. These niggas literally just said, yeah, nigga, we took possession of Florida in 1763. At first, they tried to stop the slaves from escaping to the region. The slave holders tried to stop niggas from coming down there. And then once niggas did come down there, and I guess after 1775, they agreed to grant their freedom as long as you fight in the military with us. Fight in the military with us to go against these white boys, nigga that done motherfucking double crossed us. our own little brothers or they own cousins to double cross them. How they gonna say, if you escape down here, you free? Like, this shit is crazy as hell. These niggas just tell a nigga anything.
The champion of the British policy was John Murray, 4th Earl of Dunmore. With his proclamation of freedom to fugitive blacks in 1775, Lord Dunmore became the enemy of American slaveholders and the hero of thousands of African Americans who crossed to the British side. Dunmore acted out of strategic concerns, not altruism, and he was never able to muster more than 800 troops. He assembled 10,000 toward the close of the war, but the British commander refused to deploy them. Nonetheless, he succeeded in harassing the Americans by enticing away their slaves and forcing them to commit greater resources to guard their plantations.
Man, hold the fuck up, man. Now they saying that this nigga right here, this goof ass nigga right here, they said that this goof ass nigga right here, goddamn, he assembled 10,000 runaway slaves. You see this crazy ass shit? Where did 10,000 come from? Where the fuck did 10,000 come from? If these ain't the indigenous people. If he did do some shit like that. $1775. They encouraging blacks to run away from the colonies to Florida, just like I guess these niggas went up there, just like they said that the Spaniards so-called went up there way before and was putting posters on the trees by the plantations, and niggas was reading it like a newspaper. I guess the same thing happened here. These niggas is crazy. These niggas some of the illest niggas, man. Nigga said he assembled 10,000. This nigga right here. With no pistol, a sword. He got a pistol in his hand. Fuck this nigga. John Murray. Governor of Virginia.
In addition to recruiting blacks, the English also formed alliances with the Seminoles and other border Indians during the Revolution. The Declaration of Independence enshrined this notorious act, vividly accusing King George III of inciting violence among the frontier Indians. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. The Seminoles, just one of the tribes alluded to, concentrated their undistinguished destruction on the frontier plantations of Georgia and Alabama. During the fighting, they solidified ties to the British, but even more importantly, they deepened ties to black fugitives. In some cases, blacks and Indians fought side by side against the Americans. In the East Florida Rangers, for example, Southeastern Indians, fugitive slaves, and British loyalists jointly raided and pillaged American plantations.
Now the black fugitives, now the Seminoles got the deepest ties with them. Now these fuck ass niggas is saying, nigga, we don't want no blacks in the tribe. That whole ass shit, man. These niggas so much fuck niggas, man. The deepest ties. Come on, man. Talking about some damn fugitive. We done went from a fugitive to a rebel to all type. These niggas keep putting all type of labels on the nigga. These niggas keep running away from indigenous though. Let's get to that. Oh ass niggas.
From 1775 to 81, Lord Dunmore's proclamation and the general wartime chaos led to a great influx of blacks into Florida, which was the only colony that remained under British control throughout the Revolution. In 1782, the situation changed when the Americans finally won the war. Most of the black British loyalists left the region, traveling with their new allies to Canada or the West Indies. Yet life in Florida remained inviting for many black fugitives. Spain was about to regain the colony, as a reward from the U.S. for neutrality during the Revolution, and many blacks expected lenient treatment at Spanish hands. As a result, in 1782 hundreds chose to remain in Florida, awaiting the return of Spanish rule, forming communities in the wilderness, and continuing to develop ties with Seminole Indians.
Come on. Now it's just new people just keep forming new communities, but they're being communities going back, they say, since the 1680s. It's just new communities, new bullshit communities that they saying. And then gonna say this whole ass shit, 1775, 81, that the nigga, it was a great influx of blacks into Florida because of this nigga that's wearing plaid. Nigga talking about he rounded up 10,000. Now the goddamn black Seminoles is niggas that went into Canada or the West Indies. And the other one stayed. But you know what makes it so funny about all the situation? It's because if they saying that, oh yeah, he rounded up these niggas and brought these niggas down here. But then you got, whenever the motherfucking goddamn government do come down here, come down to Florida, they saying they first Indian agent, you got people coming and saying that the blacks that's there is they runaways and they coming with fake paperwork from 30 years ago. But these supposed to be the people that this so-called dude rounded up. Man, that shit is all flux and that shit is all boo-boo. The game is that these is the ancient Floridians that being taken in and out. I ain't gonna say been taken in and out, but they've been running, coming back. Because they coming back to the home turf. Yeah, we're talking about hundreds decided to remain in Florida, trying to see what the Spanish gonna say, and continue to develop ties with the Seminole Indians. Come on, man. But then they gonna try to say, yeah, later on the days with these niggas slaves. But now they got the greatest ties. And man, they just try to justify, man. They just trying to justify the bullshit, man. So you got a nigga in slavery that wrote this. They trying to say this a nigga wrote this. The nigga's supposed to be enslaved at the time, run away all in the woods, all type of crazy ass shit. The goofy ass stories that they talk about some slaves. Now the nigga wrote this. A petition. Come on, man. Let's see what they talking about, man. This shit crazy.
Spain officially regained Florida in 1783. The empire, however, was now so weak that it could barely exert any influence over the colony. Fugitive slaves from Georgia and South Carolina continued to escape to the region, but they increasingly sought ties to the Seminoles, not the Spanish. The shift is reflected in the life of Prince Whitten. A fugitive slave from Georgia, Whitten successfully applied for Spanish citizenship in 1795. By 1812 he was a friend of the Seminoles, prominently fighting alongside them against the United States.
Man, come on, man. They saying that the nigga wrote this? The slave wrote this. The nigga just ran. They saying that the nigga ran from South Carolina and wrote up this petition. Good handwriting. Now, man, what's the nigga going to school over there or something? Did the nigga already know how to write? What the hell going on? Why is this not adding up to the narrative that we get that black slaves is fucked up? Black people fucked up. And niggas is still running down to Florida in a safe haven. Florida is the most safe haven place in the world for niggas during this time. But this is not part of the Underground Railroad. How is this not part of the Underground Railroad? Niggas been running to Florida since goddamn since 1670. Coming straight off the boat, reading shit on the fucking tree by the plantation and running to Florida. That's what they want niggas to believe. And when niggas running to Florida, these niggas coming down writing their own petition. These niggas is dog. These These niggas gotta be the throatest. Ain't nobody wrote a story about them yet. These niggas ain't here in Hollywood yet. How this ain't the greatest story? Some niggas got off a ship. Niggas got fucked up over there in Africa. They say niggas got fucked up in Africa. Niggas got off the ship. Niggas turned into big boys when they got off the ship. Turned up. Ran away. Came down here, started writing. Started learning how to speak Indian language. And started growing Indian food. That's what they want niggas to believe. This shit getting ridiculous.
American slaveholders, meanwhile, started to complain bitterly of Seminole interference with their slaves, just as the English had once complained of Spanish meddling. Georgians voiced their concerns in one of the first treaties in U.S. history, the Treaty of New York, 1790, and in the subsequent Treaty of Coleraine, 1796. In both, the U.S. government tried to compel friendly Creek Indians to recover black fugitives from Florida. This was done under the pretense that the slaves had actually escaped to the Creeks. The fiction did not sit well with the Seminoles, who saw it correctly as a ruse to capture their black allies, ***.
So I guess they trying to say that. So why they just don't put it out and say that the goddamn Seminoles, these so-called Creeks that didn't know what the fuck, or why they was being called Seminoles when they first started being called Seminoles, even though black people being called Cimarroons and Maroons and these terms that's tied to Seminole way before these niggas even being called Seminole. But on top of that, you got these niggas talking about they putting in a treaty just to, in my eyes, it's just to justify to be able to have backup to be able to come down and enslave. To say, what they say, hold on. That the Georgians had some concerns about it. Oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So why don't they say that these so-called Creeks, these Seminoles, it's the first slave liberators? Why they don't push that? Why they don't say these are the people that freed the slaves? They freed the slaves. They fought with them. They said when these niggas try to come get our slaves, we ain't letting these niggas go. Matter of fact, we coming to your plantation and we influencing them to run away. Matter of fact, we coming to your plantation and setting it on fire and taking them with us. So how is these niggas not slave liberators? How is these niggas not the first slave liberators in America before the British? Why they don't promote that? Why they don't push that if that's what that was? Because that's not what that is. They're gonna try to say, oh yeah, the Seminoles was interfering. They was meddling. And they taking our slaves. So I guess they saying that the Creeks is the niggas that's taking the slaves and they gonna sell the niggas back to the government, and the Seminoles is the niggas that's not gonna sell them back. They just gonna keep the niggas. Probably because them niggas is already connected to the niggas. Being connected. They talking about upper and Lord. This nigga is a whole different people.
From the start, American liberty had been a contradiction, a promise that excluded both African and Native Americans. Fittingly, its birth in the late 1700s also gave rise to its shadow, a community of blacks and Indians on the southern frontier who united to pursue their own self-interests and ideals. By the close of the century, Black-Indian relations were taking a new direction in Florida. Seminoles had increased their ties to free blacks. Even more intriguingly, the Indians were said to be holding black slaves. Rumor had it that these slaves, however, followed their own leaders, bore arms, and lived in towns apart from their Indian masters. What kind of slavery was this where the bondsmen bore arms? And what kind of society was taking shape in Florida, where quasi-free blacks were living with Seminole Indians? Could this society possibly contend with its powerful new enemy to the north? The answers emerge from the fascinating life and times of John Horse.
Now that's crazy. They're gonna bring that up and say, well, you know, this is interesting, this is going on, when it been going on way before this time frame that they're talking about. Talking about the late 1700s. Oh yeah, now we getting a closer tie with the black allies. We marrying in them. They get to marry our sisters and aunties. Like, come on, man. And you know what makes it so funny? Because the Seminole Indians tried to make a argument against the black Seminoles, I want to say in the 90s, 80s, talking about that the black Indians didn't have no interest in the land. But that's interesting because they try to say that, you know, that the blacks and Indians had their own self-interest and ideas. So that's definitely interesting. Now it's a new direction. Excuse me, now it's a new direction, but as they were said, that's why they told Oglethorpe to come down to goddamn Florida a long time ago before they even formed Georgia. For the same, this seems like it's the same playbook. Oh yeah, go get them. Go get them blacks down there. Are they runaway? Go get them. Somebody go get them. Somebody go get them. Somebody go get them. They can't go get them because the niggas is doing whatever the fuck. These niggas is real warriors. And you just can't come through with no motherfucking salt or no fucking bullshit ass dope and thinking that niggas just gonna fuck with you like that. When niggas know you already done did the people's bad back then, when niggas did come with the little things and thought niggas was having good work. Niggas some got nigga all in zombie land around this motherfucker back then too.
The early years of John Horse chart the emergence of the Black Seminoles and the escalation of their conflict with the United States. Resisting American slavery, the Maroons formed a fascinating partnership with Seminole Indians, adopting aspects of Indian culture and fusing it with African traditions. Life in Florida was far from idyllic, but in comparison with Southern-style slavery, it was a form of paradise. From the year of John Horse's birth, however, paradise was under threat as American slaveholders looked south with anger. The Americans were led by the most powerful man of their era, General Andrew Jackson.
Damn, so the most powerful man couldn't get us up out of there, huh? Took, what they say, 1812. Well, Bowlegs didn't surrender until 1849. Come on now. Long live Bowlegs.
In the turbulent year of 1812, the United States was fighting its second war with England while preparing for attacks on the Indian strongholds of the Southeast. By the end of the year, General Andrew Jackson would emerge as a new national hero. Less conspicuously, in the heart of the Seminole Nation, a boy was born who would one day rise to challenge Jackson and his armies. The land of John Horse's birth was a rich and fertile plain known as Payne's Prairie. Situated on the Alachua Savannah, the site was the birthplace of the earliest Seminole communities, founded by Cowkeeper in the 1750s. Fugitive blacks were first reported in the vicinity in the early 1700s, living with the Yamasees, one of the precursor tribes of the Seminoles.
Now the blacks was living with the Yamasees. Now they putting light and saying that the Yamasees is an ancient Floridian tribe. And that the blacks is living with the Yamasees. But they be trying to paint it sometimes. They say that the Yamasees sometimes were slave catchers. But you know what make it so funny? These niggas don't call the African slave catchers. They say prisoners of war. They say these niggas are them niggas over there. And there's kings and all type of shit. But not no slave catchers. But you know, they'll try to put that on the American Indians like niggas is just bad. Even though there was some bad people. But it's some more bad work. And it's like how they just tried to just put, talking about Sir Francis Drake dropped off some motherfuckers, and that's the reason why some black Indians in the motherfucking in the Carolinas and shit. Now they gonna try to say that the reason why the Yamasees is black people is because some niggas ran from South Carolina. But they never bring up the town of Africa or Santa Catalina to Africa that was already in the Yamasee area. God damn, that goofy ass shit. Damn.
John Horse's mother was an African woman whose name is lost to history. His father and master was Charles Cavallo, a Seminole Indian. The birth name Cavallo revealed the hybrid nature of John Horse's world, where Spanish and English mingled freely with Hichiti and Muskogee. Written variously as Caballo, Kaya or Kohia, the name was probably a variant on the Hichiti word Kawai for horse. John Horse, used later in his life, was how black Seminoles would come to remember their future leader.
His mother is an African woman whose name is lost to history. How inconvenient. But She's an African woman. We know that from lookership. But they not gonna say that she is an ancient Floridian, probably from a Tobago, Yamasi, Timucua, or Oklahoma. You're not gonna say that. I'm saying that because those were the people that was enslaved during the time frame. I ain't gonna say enslaved, but that was up under these people during that time frame. And who some of the people from the outside say, okay, yeah, they was their slave, but you know, that was still his wife. That was one of his wives. But they got this father's first and last name. Know the nigga was mixed and all type of. They just got a whole breakdown on his father, but nothing about his mother though. Find it very interesting. Suspect.
There are no descriptions of John Horse before adolescence, but his appearance, like his name, must have revealed a mixed heritage. Describing him as an adult, white observers classed him as a Negro but noted a mixture of ethnic features, including black skin, long and straight black hair, Seminole clothing, tall erect posture, and just a smile of red blood mantling to his forehead.
Now this nigga got straight hair. Now a nigga that's mixed got straight hair. They ain't say it was curly and none of that. No curl. This nigga got some damn. The only depiction, this nigga rocking some goddamn braids or some dreads. These niggas said his hair was straight. These niggas is crazy.
John Horse was born a slave, but in 1812 Seminole bondage was radically different from Southern-style slavery. Under the Seminoles' loose system, slaves and free blacks lived in their own towns, often at a considerable distance from Indian masters. The blacks built villages on the same model as the Indians, living in chickees elevated, palmetto plank homes adapted to Florida's climate and topography. Blacks elected their own leaders and in general conducted themselves more like military allies than slaves.
Come on, man. Niggas did whatever the fuck they wanted to do, man. Been doing what they want to do. What makes it so crazy? They try to say that Micanopy was Abraham's, or Abraham was a slave to Micanopy. But Abraham's town was damn near 2 days march from the nigga. How the hell can a nigga say that? That nigga is a nigga, a slave owner, but the nigga stay, I live in the city, but the nigga stay in Dallas. Like, come on, man. This shit is ridiculous.
This loose form of bondage bore almost no resemblance to the South's peculiar institution. By 1812, Black slaves in the southern U.S. were considered chattel, the legal property of their owners, who exercised nearly complete control over them. Harsh codes controlled the slaves' daily actions, outlawing basic rights like education and property ownership. Punishments for minor infractions included whipping, branding, ear cropping, 4 major infractions, amputation, and lynching.
And the nigga was running away doing all this and was coming down writing great cursive language. I mean, writing great cursive English. Like, come on, man.
Indians from the Cherokee, Creek, and other civilized tribes of the Southeast emulated the Southern American approach to slavery. Their practice of the institution had roots in the colonial period, when the British encouraged Indians to hold African slaves as a way to control their own problems with runaways. By the early 1800s, the southeastern tribes were adopting increasingly harsh slave codes, and individual Indians were enlarging their slave holdings. Not long after John Horse's birth, chiefs in Georgia and Mississippi would rank among those states' largest slaveholders.
Nigga, now in motherfucking Florida, where so-called all the motherfucking black people was. Hold on, there was something else I don't know what to point out.
In contrast to the other southeastern Indians, the Seminoles practiced a form of slavery that was entirely unique across all of North America. The Seminole system had no slave codes or harsh mechanisms for punishment. Black Seminoles did not work for their masters on a daily basis.
They're the only one in America that had this little system. Like, you see this old stupid ass shit. Oh yeah, the Seminoles, they had a unique, they had the coldest slave system. They really had the slave system that we should have all been doing. The Seminoles is the only ones that, like, come on, this shit is crazy. Just to try to put a nigga up under somebody, like, a nigga can't just be out here rocking doing it. Like, a nigga gotta be up under somebody. That's that old Bible. That's that old, these niggas just pagan heathens. Nigga, somebody gotta be their slave. Somebody gotta be their master. That's that stupid shit. And they be trying to justify with this stupid ass shit.
In contrast to the other southeastern Indians, the Seminoles practiced a form of slavery that was entirely unique across all of North America. The Seminole system had no slave codes or harsh mechanisms for punishment. Black Seminoles did not work for their masters on a daily basis. In general, they were simply required to render annual tribute and to be available to defend the community. General Edmund Gaines, who knew the system as well as any white man, described it as a primitive form of feudalism. The Maroons, he said, served as black vassals and allies of the Indians. Gad Humphreys, the government agent to the Seminoles in the 1820s, called the blacks slaves, but in name, they work only when it suits their inclination. Lieutenant George McCall seconded these observations after visiting a black village in 1826. They are chiefly runaway slaves from Georgia, who have put themselves under the protection of Micanopy, or some other chief, whom they call master, and to whom, for this consideration, they render a tribute of 1/3 of the produce of the land, and 1/3 of the horses, cattle, and fowl they may raise. Otherwise they are free to go and come at pleasure.
What it do, debate stage? Coming through, I appreciate that. Coliseum arguments in the building. So, just like how I brought up that get down with, as far as that little write-up by South Florida, where they were showing these same people now, they do got that in quotation. They say that they chiefly are runaway from slaves, but they also got them saying that whenever he is going to these villages, that these are not runaways, that they are not demonstrating runaway activity. And it also was showing also that he was also doing backdoor behavior, bad behavior, by enslaving people himself. As far as like, you know what I'm saying, whenever they gaffle him up and people coming through saying, oh yeah, that was my slaves, woo, 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 woo. He like, nah, woo, 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 that ain't it. But then he ended up taking them and doing a whole bunch of crazy ass shit. So the niggas is bad people, but just like I said, I also get it. I showed that on part 1, where the nigga said, it's in quotation also, that these people is not demonstrating that they are runaways. And it also saying that these niggas is coming up with fake bill of sales and doing all type of gay ass shit to try to say that they the owner of the slaves, or that they the owner of these black people. But yeah, that was, I know the nigga said that though.
Historians have not been able to pinpoint the origins of Seminole slavery. The practice may date to the British occupation of Florida, or...
Hold on, man, they've been coming with all this all this. Now they can't pinpoint it. See, man, that's what I'm saying. There's so much fluff. There's so much whooping to the game that they can just come out and just make this statement after they just got done putting a whole bunch of other stuff saying, you know, was putting it out there like it's facts, but they're gonna say, well, you know, it really ain't a pinpoint of the origin of the Seminole slavery. But they just got done promoting, putting out how the blacks was their allies. They was the folks. Matter of fact, they marrying the people. People get to marry. Matter of fact, the blacks get to do their own thing. And they can't pinpoint to slavery because, like I also showed, which is going to show within this get down also, where Marcellus had to come from the Carolinas to be able to teach these niggas how to be slave owners. This is about time these niggas is in goddamn Oklahoma, 1840s. Talking about they can't pinpoint the Seminole origins of the Seminole slave. It was never no slavery until these niggas tried to come to Oklahoma and try to come with the backdoor shit, trying to live like some white boys. That's when the shit all got blew up.
Historians have not been able to pinpoint the origins of Seminole slavery. The practice may date to the British occupation of Florida, or even to the early 1700s, when blacks first sought refuge in the region. Undoubtedly, Seminole chiefs gained wealth and prestige from owning slaves. At least partially, however, their system seems to have evolved as a form of protection for runaways. As American-style slavery expanded south toward Florida, fugitive blacks found that they had a much better chance of maintaining their freedom if they could claim to be the property of a Seminole Indian.
Now the blacks is down here. Yo. They keep going to the early 1700s, the early 1700s. The first blacks in the region, but they still haven't brought up Santa Catalina to Africa or the town of Africa. I find that very interesting that they not putting that out there. These same places where they doing Indian slave raids, big time. And then at the same time, I'm going to say, well, shit, at the same time, in the same area, it's a whole bunch of blacks that's running away from South Carolina and coming down here and being cool with the Indians. Matter of fact, to where we just started noticing this in the 1800s, how the blacks is living far away from them, but they still they slaves. Like, come on, man, this shit is crazy.
Under their lenient arrangements with the Indians, the Black Seminoles prospered. Lieutenant McCall recorded his impressions in 1826. We found these Negroes in possession of large fields of the finest land, producing large crops of corn, beans, melons, pumpkins, and other esculent vegetables. One saw, while riding along the borders of the ponds, fine rice growing, and in the village large corn cribs were filled, while the houses were larger and more comfortable than those of the Indians themselves.
Niggas is living more comfortable and more wealthier than they so-called the slave owners. Nigga said the nigga that's growing corn, beans, melons, pumpkins, vegetables, motherfucking goddamn sugar cane. Niggas growing all American shit. They got one African staple. Going all American shit. I wouldn't even say that's the staple. But then on top of that, some niggas came down. They saying niggas came down from Carolina and from Georgia and just took over the land, and then nobody checked their ass. As far as there's no Indians running niggas up out of there. There's nobody scratched the nigga, pinched the niggas or nothing. The niggas just got control of the land, just started growing shit. Didn't nobody take none of their shit or nothing. Told them niggas they had to move around or nothing. Niggas didn't get beat up, didn't nobody get slapped or nothing. Niggas come to Florida and it's sweet as hell. And everywhere else in the world is hell for a nigga, but you come to Florida, nigga, you done crossed the motherfucking nigga, found the youth for black people. Ain't nobody touching, nigga. You're free, nigga. All you gotta do is wear a cross. This shit crazy. Taking control of the finest lands and they just growing shit. And the Spaniards ain't saying nothing to them. And these Indians, how they try to portray it, in history before you find out it is a Negro war within these Seminole Wars. But how they try to say that before you find out it's a Negro war, these Indians was the toughest Indians that the government ever fought. These was the real, these Indians was down here was scalping people, and they was tripping. Turns out it was the black Indians doing all that shit. But these are the type of straps they said in the 1750s, 1760, the muskets.
The Maroons enjoyed another unusual privilege, the right to bear arms. With Spanish muskets for hunting and self-defense, they formed a formidable...
How the hell they get the right? That's what niggas come to Florida, it's sweet as hell, nigga. Now you get the right to bear arms. You come to Florida, we gonna give you a gun. Nigga, come to Florida, we gonna give you a gun, nigga. We give you somewhere to stay, nigga. You can grow, nigga. Ain't nobody, nigga. It's all good in the hood. So they either want niggas to believe that these are slaves, that these are just random slaves just coming down here and just having it good down here, and don't want niggas to be saying that these are the indigenous maroon communities that was already down here. It's crazy it's crazy that they would say that this is a crazy statement to say that the blacks was already from here and to where they felt comfortable to go to wherever they need to go to do what they needed to do. But it's not crazy to say that these is just some runaway Africans that ain't never been to Florida. They coming from Georgia and South Carolina. These niggas just got off a boat not too long ago. And these niggas coming to Florida and doing all this. Don't know nobody. And getting guns. But this shit crazy. These niggas tell a nigga anything, man.
The Maroons enjoyed another unusual privilege, the right to bear arms. With Spanish muskets for hunting and self-defense, they formed a formidable force. Their freedom was striking to outsiders, many of whom had only seen African Americans under Southern slavery. After visiting the Black Seminoles in 1822, William Simmons called them the finest-looking people I have ever seen. Surgeon Jacob Retmott, who met the blacks in the 1830s, had a different opinion, believing that the diabolical-looking wretches had too much pride. They had none of the servility of our northern blacks, but were constantly offering their dirty paws with as much hauteur and nonchalance as if they were conferring a vast deal of honor.
The right to bear arms, and said that they was the finest looking people he have ever seen. Now these are supposed to be runaway slaves. These are supposed to be people that's having a hard time, that's poor. They on a run, so-called. They're runaways, so-called. Don't have a stable place to live. And these is the finest looking people they have ever seen in the 1830s.
The culture that John Horse was born into was an evolving mixture of African, Indian, Spanish, and slave traditions. Maroons adopted some forms of material culture from the Seminole Indians, including living in chickees, wearing Seminole clothing, straining kunti, a native root, and making sofki, a paste created by mashing corn with a mortar and pestle. Living apart from the Indians, however, the Maroons appear to have developed their own unique African American culture.
So they lived apart from the Indians, but they adopted the Indians' culture, even though they lived apart. So they lived apart. They from somewhere else. They just coming down. The people giving them their space. They not keeping their own traditions. They're following the Indian traditions. My grandpa grew up on sofki. I'm 2 generations away from not eating sofki. 2 generations. These niggas been eating sofki for the longest. I wonder what unique African American culture they talking about. Come on, man. Black forts and villages, 1738 through the 1840s. What about Santa Catalina to Africa? What about the town of Africa? Niggas ran from Florida. Niggas ran from Florida. And started all these settlements, all these town settlements, black town settlements. Where are the black towns and settlements that's going up north? If they talk about this, the Underground Railroad, the Underground Railroad went up north, they did this, they did that. Where are all the black forts and villages? It should be historical black forts and villages, which they not gonna put these historicals out there like that.
The culture may have been most visible in the black Seminole towns, which bore the stamp of their African origins. By John Horse's youth, Maroons had established more than a dozen settlements in Florida where they maintained a distinct cultural identity. Place names like Mulatto Girls Town, Pilaclackaha, and Buckra Woman's Town * all revealed a strong black influence. Maroons are also believed to have named the Sewanee River from an African phrase Subwani, Bantu for my house, my home.
Hold on, man. Now these niggas done named the damn river? Now they saying that the river is an African river. Even though it sound like Shawnee. But these niggas don't say that it's an African. These niggas, boy. And you know what make it so crazy? They keep on talking about all this whole African shit. Niggas is naming the shit out after all these African places as far as like they naming the shit. But they ain't trying to go back to Africa. They not pushing the line and say, take us back to Africa. We don't want to be here. We not from here. This is a foreign land. This is another planet to us. Take us back to Africa. Take me back to my homeland. These are state towns and villages where they people was previously taken from. They just coming back to the ruins. Come on, man. Niggas got over 30 towns and villages. Come on now. In the state of Florida. And they saying that all these people is coming from Georgia and Carolina. They ain't pushing nothing that these people is from Florida or come from the Spaniards from Florida. They all come from Georgia and Carolina. That's what they really want niggas to believe. Or that niggas come from, or if niggas is coming, I'm saying if niggas is coming from up there, these ain't nothing but the niggas that was took up there and these niggas is coming back. Cause they know to come back to certain little areas. But they trying to say all the motherfucking the thousands, and the tens thousands ran away from Georgia and Florida. You heard the nigga say the nigga what run together 10,000 motherfuckers? Come on, man, stop.
In terms of spirituality, the ethnic groups remained distinct. Indians followed the nativistic principles of their Great Spirit, and blacks inclined toward a syncretic form of Christianity inherited from the plantations. In general, the blacks never wholly adopted Seminole culture and beliefs, nor were they accepted into Native American society. The Indians did not consider their black allies to be Seminoles. Black headmen were occasionally admitted into Seminole bands and given busk names, but this was an exception, generally in exchange for valuable services.
For valuable services now. For valuable services now, even though they say that the Yamasees were their they shut that down. Like that. Hey. Wait. But just kind of throwing it off. Okay. So they say that the blacks wasn't really part of the Seminoles, but we got the general saying that they was influencing Seminoles, in possession of Seminoles, calling them the chiefs, calling them black Indians. Niggas got hella villages and hella towns. The dress wear, the names, speaking the language. Thousands of these niggas speaking the language. Thousands. How do all these blacks know how to speak goddamn Indian? Now they saying that the niggas didn't have no type of spirituality. Okay, so it don't make sense from both sides. It don't make sense from both sides. And what I mean by that, because if they say that the niggas is so-called coming over from Africa, but as soon as these niggas is escaping, but they steadily keeping the Christianity thing, but not going back to their traditions. When niggas really don't fuck with it, I mean, I ain't gonna say niggas don't fuck with it. The blacks fuck with it by being in a society, but the blacks really don't fuck with it like that. That ain't like, because the reason that I say that is because blacks doing so much different shit within the United States. You got half the blacks doing some Muslim shit, half the blacks doing some Christian shit, half the blacks on some atheist shit. The other blacks is it's all different within the culture. Now, they want to talk about shit. But the Indians is more it's more Christian than the blacks. These niggas don't be pushing no certain gods. These nigga ain't heard no Seminole motherfucker talk about no certain Seminole gods running around this motherfucker. So all this shit they trying to say, oh yeah, these niggas got their native principles. But what's the Seminole god that them niggas be praying to or whatever? So this is some more fluff into the game. Talk about some spirituality shit. These niggas is in the church like a motherfucker right now. Like everybody else. And the only reason that I would say that the blacks was fucking with it before them like that, because the blacks was the ones that was enslaved first by the motherfucking Spaniards that started the goddamn missions down there, where the niggas came down and took the niggas from these areas, these 50K.
Rather, black Seminoles appear to have drawn most of their customs from the slave cultures of the Deep South, with traces directly from Africa. In a legacy of the plantations, for instance, weddings featured a broom-jumping ceremony. A host of practices echoed Africa, such as the use of African names, ring shouts, and call-and-response forms of worship. The importation of African slaves did not become illegal in the U.S. until 1807, and the continent was a living memory for many members of John Horse's community.
Say echo Africa, such as African names, ring shouts. Nigga said a ring shout. Call and response forms of worship. What the hell is that? I never heard of that. Y'all know that? That should still be prevalent. That should still be prevalent. Then once again, just try to put niggas up under one blanket and never bring up the fact of the ancient Floridian tribes that was enslaved, that was taken up out of their bodies, Greeks that started being called what blacks was being called at the time. But at the same time, these was people that was already tied in too. But just like I say, I bring that up because we talked about Miss Bessie Payne that was married to Chief Payne, and how she talked about the Payne's Landing Treaty, or the Treaty of Payne's Landing. And she pushed that even though that she looked like an African, that she a Seminole. So that's the same thing that I'm seeing right here where they saying, oh yeah, y'all some black people, so you gotta be African. But when you, but if they was talking to some old black people back then, them niggas wouldn't say they was African, they would say they Seminole.
Language was another reflection of the Black Seminoles' distinct, hybrid culture. Their dialect reflected strong ties to both the plantations and Africa, while delineating the Maroons from their Indian allies. Black interpreters mastered the Hichiti and Muskogee dialects, but their personal language remained Afro-Seminole, a variant of English that was strongly related to Gullah, the dialect of Sea Islanders along the Carolina and Georgia coast. Like Gullah, Afro-Seminole incorporated words from Spanish, English, and Muskogee, also Bantu and other African languages.
What is the Bantu and African languages within the Black Seminoles? I do not know. I do not know. Niggas is 2 generations away from eating softy. Dialects from the plantation. Mastered the Indian language of Hichiti and Muskogee. How that ain't our language, even when niggas got to Mexico, the Mexicans just off the bat called niggas Muskogees. Then nobody had to tell them this, and then nobody had to tell them that. They just said, nigga, these are Muskogees. Now nigga learned Muskogee language, like that shit wow.
At the time of John Horse's birth, the Black Seminoles were isolated geographically, but they were well aware of the political realities of the surrounding world, particularly the American South. Most of the Maroons were, after all, refugees and descendants of refugees from chattel slavery. These men and women had personal knowledge of the institution's brutal nature and of their vastly preferable life in Spanish Florida. Unfortunately for them, the slaveholders of Georgia and South Carolina were equally aware of their favorable situation.
Because they had already came down and got at their folks when they first started establishing the Carolinas. So all this they talk about slavery, these are just prisoners of wars. But they try to put the chattel and the disrespect slavery on there because they black. But as far as how they moving once they get in their grips, as far as they coming back to certain lands in Florida, they doing certain, they really turning up. Rebels, rebellion. When they tripping, they tripping. Making it uncomfortable.
Since 1790, representatives from Georgia and the Carolinas had been pressuring the federal government to recover fugitives who had escaped to Florida. Even before George Washington became president, the Continental Congress had already arranged for the return of fugitive slaves from at least 13 tribes. After Washington's election, efforts concentrated on the largest extant group of runaways, the Seminole Maroons. Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson applied himself to overturning the infamous Spanish edict that had granted freedom to runaway slaves since 1693. Meanwhile, Secretary of War Henry Knox negotiated the Treaty of New York, 1790, one of the first treaties in U.S. history, which attempted to compel Creek Indians to return fugitive slaves from the Seminole country. Describing Knox's treaty years later, the abolitionist Joshua Giddings would sardonically observe that the first exercise of our treaty-making power under the Constitution was put forth for the benefit of the slave interests of Georgia. The treaty failed to yield the desired results. Similar diplomatic efforts likewise failed in 1791 and 1795.
Because it's fake paperwork. And they're trying to be able to put it on paper and have backing from the government to be able to pull this move off, to be able to bring in more resources and people to do this. This is just a request. "13 tribes. There's black people within that many tribes. So this is the story that they want niggas to believe. They want niggas to believe they was pulling motherfuckers in from Africa where 40% of the people was dying. And then 40% of the people are dying. So it's only 60% coming in. Out of that 60, you got 40 to 50% running away. That's what they want niggas to believe.
By 1810, the situation of Florida's black refugees had become acute. Georgians were contending that almost $5 million of slave property had stolen itself to Florida. President James Madison and Secretary of State James Monroe wanted to aid the Georgians, but because of tense relations with England, Madison and Monroe were fearful of alienating Spain. As a result, they pushed for covert action. In 1811, after 30 rounds of voting in a secret session, Congress finally gave President Madison authorization to use covert force to seize Florida.
Secret session.
To the American public, the ensuing Patriot War of 1812 to 1813 appeared to be the spontaneous action of Georgia militia, the so-called Patriots. It looked as if the Patriots had entered Florida of their own accord, hoping to foment rebellion and build popular support for U.S. annexation. Few Americans realized that the President and Congress had authorized the action. The ruse even fooled generations of historians who described the Patriot War as the independent action of filibusters. Attempting to seize St. Augustine, the Patriots established a garrison at Fort Picolata on the St. Johns River. To build national support for their spontaneous revolt, Patriot John McIntosh wrote to Monroe, emphasizing the perils that his men faced because of Florida's unruly blacks. "Our slaves are incited to rebel, and we have an army of Negroes raked up in this country. Let us ask, if we are abandoned, what will be the situation of the southern states with this body of men in the neighborhood? St. Augustine, the whole province, will be the refuge of fugitive slaves, and from thence emissaries can, and no doubt will, be detached, to bring about a revolt of the black population in the United States."
Yeah, it don't shook. The unruly blacks that they found in America, well, in Florida. You know what I'm saying? They definitely ain't got paperwork for those thousands, tens of thousands, that they say that so-called ran away, that people never wrote about.
The Spanish were hardly prepared to defend their own city. By 1812, their presence in Florida was feeble. During attacks on St. Augustine, Spaniards refused to engage in direct combat, taking refuge instead in their impenetrable fort, El Castillo de San Marcos. Active defense was left to the free black militia of Mose, in concert with Seminole Indians. Indeed, the principal strength of the garrison at St. Augustine consists of Negroes, wrote the governor of Georgia to Secretary of State Monroe. The black warriors were more than capable of defending the city. They drove the Patriots from St. Augustine. The Seminoles then sacked the Georgians at Fort Picolata, destroying their storehouses and stopping the offensive.
And now they talking about the Seminoles. But it's really Negro Indians. It's really black Indians. See, and that's the bullshit in the game. Just like on that Osceola tip that they talking about, kind of like before he got locked up, he was running around going wild. They're saying, "Oh yeah, Osceola and the Indians came through, but then when they come through and come arrest the motherfuckers or come get at the people that him and, you know what I'm saying, him and his peoples, it's some nigga Indians."
By January 1815, the Patriot War had failed completely. Southerners interested in Florida took heart, however, in a new military hero, a man who appeared far more capable than the hapless Patriots of seizing the territory. In two breathtaking battles, General Andrew Jackson had secured the peace of the South. First, he defeated rebellious Creeks at Horseshoe Bend, 1814. Then, of greater strategic significance, he defeated the British in the Battle of New Orleans, 1814-15, concluding the War of 1812. The daring general now commanded the Army of the Southeast and was the glory of the nation. His next target was Spanish Florida. In due time, Jackson would become one of the most towering figures in American history and the personal bane of the Black Seminoles. In 1815, his star was just beginning to rise. After New Orleans, popular opinion held that the hero was destined for the White House. He would eventually prove to be a political genius, but Jackson's ascension on the national stage was still a generation away. Already, however, it was clear that the hero could appeal to widely disparate elements of the electorate. For a generation of Americans, Andrew Jackson became the living embodiment of the country's frontier values. Born in South Carolina to Irish immigrants, he served in the Revolutionary War at age 13, became a frontier lawyer in his 20s, and a military hero of world renown in his 30s. Like his political predecessor Thomas Jefferson, he was a paradoxical figure. Jackson became known as a man of the people, yet he owned one of the largest plantations in Tennessee. Of grave concern to the Black Seminoles in 1815, Andrew Jackson was an ardent defender of slavery. As a politician, he would later maintain a deliberate vagueness on the issue, yet his actions in defense of the institution were incontrovertible. Historians have speculated that slavery was always the hidden issue behind Jackson's political fortunes. Whether or not this was true, in 1815 he was on the verge of establishing himself as the champion of the Southern expansionists. He dreamed of gaining for the U.S. all of the territory in Spanish North America, Florida, Texas, and the West. Here, slaveholders saw an expanding platform for their peculiar institution and a hedge against Northern power. The country had some obstacles before it could expand, however, namely, in Florida, Spaniards, Indians, and free blacks. From 1814 on, Jackson sought pretexts for invading Florida. He communicated to President Monroe that he had a covert plan to secure the whole of East Florida, without implicating the government. The plan revolved around the Black Seminoles. Jackson was acutely aware that Florida was a dangerous haven for fugitive slaves. He used this situation to build support for an attack on the Seminoles and their black allies, on the grounds that Indian depredations were terrorizing the southern frontier. As he explained later, he sought in Florida to chastise a lawless foe, who, combined with a band of Negro brigands, have for some time past been carrying on a cruel and unprovoked war against the citizens of the United States. The immediate excuse for invasion came in 1815, when Jackson received reports of armed blacks and Indians manning a fort on the Apalachicola River in western Florida.
See, the reason that I say that the black Indians in Florida is because why is this the only place? Why is this the only place where they fighting hard? They keep running back to like, how was this Florida was the only safe haven place? It wasn't no other place in America. Well, I didn't say no other place, but it just seemed like that they really highlight that this is they say the safe haven for the runaways. this is this spot in Florida in North America is a safe haven for the blacks. It's crazy. And I'm gonna end it there for tonight. I'm gonna pick it back up tomorrow. Like I'm gonna pick it back up tomorrow for part 3 at Negro Fort. We're gonna keep it going at 3:46. Make sure that you're pulled up and rolled up. You know, I'm so glad that you showed up to comment, like, subscribe, tell a friend and do it again. Yeah, before I get up out of here, just give us a nice little recap on this part 2. So with this part 2, you know, we kind of had, as you see, they had said some lies, but then I tried to paint a certain picture as far as the early word of the Seminole and Cimarroons and all that, how they try to get deep into that. But if you don't know the backstories of some of those, you would just take that at face. But I know some of those backstories are able to share with some of y'all to where you know, they leaving certain stuff out, and I wonder why they leaving certain stuff out. And I'm saying they leaving certain stuff out because they're gonna have to justify that these is people that's from America, that was found in America, and that been in America. Now it did come from left field about what that sub agent said, and said that these people is from Georgia, but I also got that same sub agent saying that these are not runaways. So I wonder how, I ain't gonna say how credible that little part was in this little website part, but just like I said, I'll show the part from the South Florida, I guess the South Florida research book, South Florida University, the Indian agent Dad Humphreys and his sub agent. So that kind of caught me from left field, but that was the only thing that I was like, oh shit, hold on. He said this, but like I said, if you ain't know, you won't know that he said something else. When I got that in quotation. So, like I said, with part 2, it's kind of seeing their backstories and seeing the justification. Now, just like I say, I ain't saying that no Africans ever came to America. I'm saying that there was the black people already in America when white people came here and niggas got caught up in the twist. And I'm showing you the instance within this John Horse bill of where his peoples come from, as far as how they try to just say his mother is African, but her name is lost to the history or some old crazy shit like that. But they never gonna point out the fact that these ancient Floridian tribes have been overtaken by these Creeks that have been getting help from Europeans that was coming in with the guns, and kind of, you know what I'm saying, things kind of took a turn for us within the history over here, and to where they got instances where we got Aunt Bessie Payne being a chief, being the wife of one of the chiefs, Chief Payne, back when they did the Payne's Landing Treaty. And when they go back into history, it shows that she will be a Yamasee. They say that the Yamasees is black people, and the Akawala and Baga, and the Yamasee. But they not gonna say that these people mothers or their fathers is from these peoples, is from these ancient tribes that so-called extinct or destroyed. They're just gonna put the African term on them and just gonna try to keep it moving. But just like I say, this was a nice little get down. It's getting kind of late. I ain't know it's gonna be going that far with it as far as the time, but shit, it seems like this takes a cool little minute. But we're gonna get the information out there. This is for the folks. This ain't it's like it's for me and my little family and shit, but it's for the folks out there. Niggas can look at it and weigh it up and see if it is what it is or if it ain't what it ain't. You know what I'm saying? But I bring it to the table so the folks can look at it. And I find a lot of holes and a lot of flaws within their history and how they try to, you know what I'm saying, put it out there. As you see now, it's definitely a whole difference from the public education that we do get when niggas really start digging into these files. So, man, I appreciate everybody staying pulled up and rolled up. You know, I'm so glad that you showed up to comment, like, subscribe, tell a friend, and do it again. I'm going to get to that part 3 tomorrow. And we're just going to finish up this, started this Negro Fort and finish up all the wars and exiles and freedom. Just go through this whole little list and go and knock this out. And get to a next bill, man. Until then, man, stay sucker free, man. That's on the fact.